and welcome to our November's public board meeting. First of all, we want to inform our quorum, Mr. Chair, Mr. Secretary.
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you so much, and good afternoon to all and to our viewers. We have with the attendance of yourself as Chair, Member David Owens, Member Charles Bayless, Member Robert Poe, and Member Tomas Torres. We have sufficient quorum to proceed. Attorney Fernando Gil, our Vice Chair, is at hand. He's stepped outside of the room for a little bit. Maria Palo is excused, as well as Mr. Gerardo Loran from AFAF. But having said that, we have, as per our bylaws, sufficient quorum to proceed.
Okay, so having confirmed our quorum, we go to our next point in the agenda, which is the approval of regular past meetings minutes.
With regards to the meetings, the minutes, I'm sorry, sir, Member Tomas Torres made a couple of suggestions that were circulated to our board members. If you want to discuss them now, I think that you spoke a bit about them off the record a little while ago.
Yes, first of all, we have the September meeting. Actually, we were not able to approve it on our last meeting in October since we were in Mayagüez, and I had some comments. I saw them, I look at them, and they look fine. Anybody has any other comments on the September meeting minutes?
Minutes from September.
Not having any comments, do we get a motion to get approved?
I'll move.
Bob?
Moved by Mr.
Charles?
Cole, seconded by Mr. Bayless. No objections?
No objections? So September minutes are approved. Now we go to the October meeting. We all have them in our hands, even though they were indiligent. On last two pages, there are two minor changes recommended by Mr. Tomas Torres. I agree with them. Has anybody else had any chance to reading them? You look at it, Charles. You look okay, David?
Any motion to move?
Any motion to move? So
Second,
Charles
Mr.
and
Bayless.
Bob and Tomas.
Seconded by Mr. Poe.
And Mr. Tomas, so they are approved. So all the minutes, September, October, they are finally approved. So we keep with the agenda. Item number 2, it was done already by Mrs. Chenali Rosal. So going back, now we go to the public meeting executive summaries. We go to the audit, Mr. Robert Poe.
Thought you were going to go there. Trying to pull that up right now, Mr. Chairman, sorry.
And on the meantime, while you pull it up, we just want to address the consumer and just want to make a little comment that from now on, the public meeting is going to start in the morning, probably 8:30 or 9 o'clock. We have not decided yet. And the way we have been doing it today, up to today, is that all executive meeting goes in the morning, and the final voting is being done in the afternoon with the public. But we're changing it, so we're gonna go as other boards do. We're gonna go with the public all the way through. If there is anything that needs to go into executive session, we'll stop the public, adjourn the public. We'll go on executive session. Then whenever we're finished with the executive session, we'll come out of the executive section and go back to the public meeting again till the final, and anytime we need to do it, we'll do it again till the end of the meeting. Okay, so from now on, starting in December, you know that it's gonna be starting in the morning and not in the afternoon.
Ready,
Paul?
Mr. Chairman, and thank you for that introduction, because that was the 5th item on our agenda with the audit committee, was to deal with that question. So that was the resolution you just talked about.
Okay.
One of the biggest issues we looked at was a last-minute change that happened to our financials for 2017. It was a relatively small amount of money. We have Mr. Nelson Morales Rivera here, who could talk about what you've done to maybe avoid that, or to inform the various folks that rely on our financial statements about that particular adjustment. If you could just tell us quickly an update on where we are on that.
Right, thank you, Mr. Poe. So the authority issued its financial statements on June 28th, 2019 for financial statements for fiscal year 2017. On June 27th, the day before the issuance of the audited financial statements, we became aware of a subsequently discovered fact, specifically notification from the Puerto Rico Energy Bureau about on a resolution that includes a true-up of the provisional rate rider to reconcile the approved permanent rate with the provisional rate. That was in effect for fiscal years 2017, 2018, and 2019. Upon discovery of that subsequently discovered fact, we limited distribution of the financial statements, and we are currently reviewing them for a potential restatement. We are considering hiring the auditors so that they can assess management's position, whereby the quantitative impact is immaterial. Insofar as the qualitative impact, we believe that the adequate disclosures were made in the first issue of the financial statements. So at this point, we are waiting to hear back from our auditors with a proposal for having them engaged once again.
Thanks, Nelson. And the important thing there, Mr. Chairman, is we let everybody know who depends on our financials about the change, and we're just seeking the final resolution of this problem. It's a relatively small amount of money in the scope of PREPA, and so we don't think it's material, but we do need to sew this last item up for 2017. The other thing that we constantly monitor in this committee is, are we staying on our new procurement approach, which is a more competitive approach, and we're finding that we're doing a really good job staying on that. So things seem to be going pretty well. Those are the two most major things to report on here. We're constantly focused on cybersecurity, and we're starting to work at the control level at the different plants on cybersecurity as well. But that's a constant battle for us forever. I don't think we'll ever have that solved. We'll always just keep chasing that. Anyhow, that's our report from the Audit Committee, Mr. Chairman.
Any questions for the chairman of the committee of auditing? Having no questions? Tomas, any questions?
Yes, Nelson, you mentioned something that you are hiring the auditors again.
Yeah, so here's, that's what you heard. You heard that correctly. We may have to hire BDO again to have them work through this last little problem.
Is KPMG together?
Well, KPMG will continue to be our auditors, but it was BDO that did the work on the 2017 audit, so it's really BDO that needs to clean that up. You'll recall that
I don't know if Charles had something to say.
well, fine. You'll recall that we did not renew our contract with
Yes.
BDO over some of the problems they had in other departments. They didn't really have that problem with us. We had procured them on a straight-up basis. But, in sort of a being prudent about it, we decided not to renew. Still, they're the ones that know most about this data. They're the ones that can fix it the most cost effectively. And we do have to sew this last problem up, but we won't have a closed out financials.
And they will be signing the statement?
Yeah, because
BDO?
they're the auditors.
Okay, and KPMG will be 2018 forward?
That's right,
Yeah.
that's right. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, being an ex-CFO, if you wanted to hire KPMG to do it, they would have to re-audit the whole
Yeah,
thing.
yeah,
And your bill would be way north of $100,000, I mean.
Yeah,
where
it'd probably be
BDO
$500
can
million.
Finish it.
So this is a smart thing to do. We do recognize that there's some cloud over BDO, but there hasn't been a cloud over BDO in respect to working with PREPA, and they're the most able to resolve this issue.
And this contract will be passed through the controller and?
Oh, yeah,
all the
go through,
standard procedure?
go through our normal procurement process. We're hoping, honestly, that it will be some sort of a letter or some sort of very small engagement, because what's the total amount we're talking about here? Nelson?
Of the
Of the
impact?
adjustment, the impact.
Oh,
yeah.
it's $9.6 million.
Right.
To the statement of.
Out of $3 billion in revenue?
Out of $3 billion in revenue.
So you can see it's not very material. I mean, 9 million would be very material to you and me, but in the overall scope of what PREPA has done, this is a relatively small amount of money we've just got
So
to
we
figure
will
out.
have a resolution for approval for hiring BDO back.
Yeah, we'll have to do something, we've actually already talked about that, we will have to hire them back. And because they're uniquely suited to do it, because they did the audit, we think we can do it just through a small procurement to just get this thing wrapped up.
And that resolution will be seen in the next meeting?
I don't know if I think we've already done it in the audit committee, resolved to go ahead and engage BDO. And so what we'll probably see is information on what the amount was, how we're going to resolve this issue.
If it's beyond $500,000, we need to vote on.
Oh, it's going to be,
Oh,
it
no.
should be like under $50,000.
Under 50,000, okay.
Yeah, it should be quite a small amount. If they were going to audit the whole thing again,
Yeah.
that might be $500,000.
Okay,
Because
okay.
it's for, to finalize
That
the,
9.6 million NIT that came out in the last day before the audit was going to be,
and it's happening, and just for the purpose of clarification, it's happening in other agencies too. They start doing it, the statements, right, or their financial, like, their auditors, and obviously going back and like, no, there's not a single certified auditor that wants to take the job that somebody else did at the
Right.
beginning. So
They would have to
they're
go
always
back.
comfortable to do it back again instead of like taking over somebody else. So-
otherwise you just have to redo the work.
Exactly, so you just have to.
And that's really
redo it.
expensive and probably won't change a thing about what happened in 2017.
It's only $50,000.
I hope it's less than that.
Oh, it's-
Look, I threw out a number,
It's less than $500,000.
it's way less than 500.
So I would leave it
And
there.
I would argue it should still be, I would push for a pretty small amount.
Okay, but regardless, I will be informing the
Right,
board.
right.
Okay.
So
we'll
you'll be
know-
informing
we'll know,
and the audit committee feels comfortable with it and it's a proper way to go,
It is the proper way to go, absolutely,
okay?
absolutely. We really can't avoid it.
Yeah.
Any other question? We don't have to vote on this at all
No.
because it's something, okay. So you don't have anything else on the audit committee
No.
then? If not, then we'll go to the contracting committee. David?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Contracting and Recovery Committee met on Monday from 3 to 5 p.m. What I'd like to do is just highlight two major areas for discussion. And then later during our meeting today, we have several resolutions that we'd like to move. Let me provide a context for the two issues. The first issue really deals with the contract for light distillate number 2 fuel oil for some of our power supply facilities. We feel very strongly that we have to get the best deal for our customers, and so we issued an RFP back in August of this year. I'd like Jaime Lopez to speak to that. The second issue I'd like to have us discuss, in our last meeting, we made it very clear that we want to move forward aggressively on renewables. But we said we don't have a criteria. We said we want to get the best deal we can for the customers, but we also want to have developers who can actually deliver. So I'd like to be able to have some discussion around that set of issues and have our consultant, who I will introduce later, to discuss that with us. So let's go first to the contract for light distillate fuel oil for our power supply facility. So Jaime, if you can
Yes.
start that
Sure.
discussion.
Okay, let me put the presentation. Okay. Yes, good afternoon to the board members and to the rest of the management team as well. Back in early this year, as you might recall, we presented to this board the extension of the then current supply agreement with Puma for diesel. That contract extension was rejected by the FOMB, the Federal Oversight and Management Board. And as a result of that process, and with the guidance of the board then approved by sometime this, I think it was back in August, the issuance of a RFP for the procurement of light distillate number 2 diesel for our stations. And I'd like to take a few minutes to, that board resolution authorizing the RFP also mandated for us, for management, to present back to the board the results of the RFP process, and then of course we would, execute the agreement. I'd like to present today in a few slides the result of that RFP process, so that we can then proceed with the signature. Yeah. So go to page 2, please, approximately. In terms of timeline, the RFP was issued on August 14th, and the bids were closed on September 17th of this year. That's a typo, sorry, to 2019. The respondents to the RFP are listed. I'm gonna, again, for the record, mention what those were. Freeport Commodities, Go Green USA, Sierra Energy Partners, Puma Energy Caribe, LLC, Total Petroleum, and Transfuel, Inc. And 2 of these companies did not comply with several requirements of the RFP, and the process then continued with the remaining 3 companies. The evaluation committee was composed of management from our general counsel's office, generation directorate, of course our supply chain division, PMO office, and our fuel office, with the assistance from our procurement team and advisors from Sargent & Lundy. Next page. Evaluation criteria as presented to the proponents and evaluated: experience and capacity, financial capacity, and price proposal. Those given a weight of 25%, 25%, and 50% corresponding. If you have any questions, feel free to interrupt me at any point. This is a summary of all communications with bidders throughout the process. As you can see, since from late September, when the bids were closed, till mid-October, there were several committee meetings and communication and information requests between the different bidders and the evaluation criteria. Ahora vas a pasar la página 10, por favor. La 10. So we, as I said, we ended up with 3 potential suppliers: Puma, Freeport, and Total. Given that, just to give you some of these suppliers were able to supply the entire set of stations, including gas turbine stations. Others, like Total, was only offered the distribution to gas turbine stations by truck. The other 2 offered the ability to distribute either by pipeline or by barge. So we ended up with 2 potential scenarios, one being award the full scope to the supplier that had the capability of distributing both by land and by sea and pipeline, and the other was to divide those capabilities with the other 2 suppliers that were able to supply correspondingly either by land, by truck, or by barge. You see, we did a comparison of the 2 scenarios that we were faced. That is included at the bottom chart. First scenario with Puma resulted for the first year in an approximately $17 million, and The second scenario with Freepoint and Total, 27.1 for a difference of 9.1 in favor of first scenario Puma. This is a 1-year contract with an ability to extend for a second year, so we model the second year as well. And as you can see in our analysis, the scenario of the contract with Puma for both land-based and sea-based delivery was the one selected and negotiated. Vete ahora, sorry I keep jumping, page 8, please. Página 8. So the contract that has been negotiated and is the following. It's a step mechanism, which is pricing is determined as a function of volume from up to 1.2 million barrels per year. The pricing differential from the Platts and Argus indexes would be $10, and from 3 points with additional discounts as volume increases, as you can see in the table below. Also, Puma is extending a $45 million credit cap. Okay. One last, two last items that I want to mention. Page 11 is the decision matrix of the committee on the two alternatives, and as you can see, the Puma alternative had the highest scoring in the decision process, and factors that were prominent in the committee's decision. Consistency with the PREPA certified fiscal budget, the financial strength and stability, and of course, flexibility to handle short transaction periods, and so on and so forth that were described in the criteria. Two more things. We have received approval from the Federal Oversight and Management Board for the contract with Puma. We have the letter dated November 15th of 2019, which an unconditional approval for the contract. And then going back to, vete a la última página, please, la 13. To my initial comment, just to put it in perspective, this is a chart basically comparing the initial the original contract with Puma with the extension that was proposed and the pricing that we were able to secure under a competitive under this competitive process. And although this competitive process resulted in a higher price than the one that was negotiated for a contract extension earlier this year, we feel confident that this is what the market is right now, and these are the best terms and conditions that PREPA can achieve under the current circumstances.
Good. Any questions?
Yes, Mr. Lopez, so I remember we bought this in March, maybe March 27, 28, and the differential was $6.
$6, yes.
Was rejected by the Fiscal Oversight Management Board.
Yes.
Then we have to do a short-term contract of 4 months
Yes.
for 16 cents,
Right.
paying a 10 cents differential, and now we are having a year contract for, in the best case, 9.
Right.
So, because of fiscal board not approving, for whatever reason, we don't have good communication with them, they did not communicate properly, whatever happened. The end result is that in 4 months, we pay a differential of 10 cents more,
Right.
and we are now paying a differential of 9 cents, which is 3 cents more than in March. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Correct, but on the other hand, we need to be trustful, and sincere that this way we're being clear and transparent and showing transparency
sure.
to the consumer.
Yeah.
That things are working properly.
Yeah, and so if I could,
Yes.
Member Torres describes the situation correctly.
Yep.
let's recognize that Jose Ortiz was right on the original contract. Sometimes you're fortunate and there's a inefficiency in the market and you know about it. In that case, we probably could have got a better price than the market showed. By going competitively, the competitors realized that the market could bear more and they priced their product at that level. So sometimes competitive procurement doesn't always work in your advantage, but it is the right way to do things. It's a transparent way to do things, and we've done that, and it, in this case, ended up resulting in additional costs. But it's still the right, transparent way to do it.
That's right.
And at the same time, it shows that we were doing it transparently.
Right, absolutely. That's what we want to do.
Good. Like for the second year, actually, so we locked the price to
Yes.
it, right?
For second year.
Yep.
So at the same time,
You may have
like-
eliminated some
like
future
next year,
risk. That's
we don't
right.
know if
Yeah.
the barrel's gonna skyrocket, we do a forward price.
Yeah, you were essentially in a spot market later on,
Exactly.
yeah, where you aren't now.
Yes.
That will give like a better position in terms of financials, because
Yeah.
already you know.
Yep.
So the contract is ready to be executed by the executive director today,
Yeah.
as early as today. And again, once
Yeah.
once we secured, the last step was to secure the FOMB approval, which we did 2 days ago.
You don't need our approval again, or you don't need it, right?
No, it's just.
I think it's done, yeah.
Okay,
It's informative, okay.
great.
Yeah.
So good job on that, and sorry it worked out the way it did.
So, Mr. Chair, I'd like to go to the second issue I mentioned, and this would be a discussion about our renewable contracts. You may recall in our last meeting, the board made a commitment that we would come back to you. We would explain that criteria that we would be using, a transparent criteria, to move forward on a series of contracts that we have for renewable technologies. In order to assure that we had the best analysis possible, we reached out and secured the support from a consultant named Carl Data, who I'll introduce, to do a detailed analysis that would provide some transparency for our selection process with respect to some of these renewable contracts. Today, we want to discuss what that criterion is, suggest to you that we will move forward on some of those projects. Kyle has over 30 years energy experience. I've known him for some time. As an example, he worked for Booz Allen Hamilton. He also headed the Rocky Mountain Institute. He's done a lot of analysis on renewable technologies, particularly in Hawaii recently. Is well known by many commissions. So I'm going to have Kyle, if you could, discuss with us the process that you went through and the criteria that we would use to evaluate these renewable projects.
Mr. Chairman, can I make one slight edit? He didn't just work for Booz Allen, he headed up their energy consulting practice for the United States and Asia.
But he's a little bit humble. So that's why- Okay.
Thank you, David. And I had the honor of working on the Transformation Advisory Council while it was in place to support Puerto Rico and help oversee the IRP process. Well, thanks all of you, and appreciate the opportunity to review this and to help guide you through this important but complex decision. As David said, the importance is to have criteria that benefit all the parties, that we understand from the ratepayer perspectives, from PREPA perspective, and from the market and developers perspective, the whole picture. If you could approximate. It's not up there.
On the meantime, while we change the slide, I just want to make a minor comment. I have received a few letters putting pressure not to do what we did, and it's the responsibility of the board to look for the benefit of the consumer and the corporation. So we contracted Kyle, they'll see the report, and we'll keep doing this with any other critical matter to make sure we're transparent and the best benefit of the island of Puerto Rico and the consumer.
Okay.
I want to state on that.
This and we did not vote. We need to vote on
So gentlemen, okay, we'll bring it up later.
this. Yes.
Okay. So gentlemen, the criteria for decision-making around these shovel-ready projects are threefold. First, are developers earning unreasonable or excessive rates of return given PREPA's current counterparty risk, because they have to sign contracts now under your current risk position. Second, as you stand here today, will ratepayers save money over the life of the contract? It is always true with a technology that's advancing so fast that anytime you look forward, you can say, well, next year it might be cheaper. And that will be true next year, it'll be true the year after that, and probably the year after that again. But the question is, as you're making a decision now, will you save money over the life of your contract, irrespective of what would happen next year? The third is important because of the situation in Puerto Rico and specific around the grid. Do any of these projects, based on their location, their size, their configuration, create intractable problems to the grid that would prevent them from being interconnected in a safe and secure manner consistent with the rules that PREPA has for the grid? So these are our three criteria. We're looking at 16 projects, roughly 480 to 518 megawatts, about 1.1 gigawatt hours. That would be 8% of customer sales. The pricing of these contracts was between 9 to 11 cents per kilowatt hour, escalated at 2%, 1 to 2% at a 14.1 cap. Next slide. So the experience in Hawaii can actually be instructive. Hawaii had the exact same problem in 2015 for about 100 megawatts. There were 3 projects that for various reasons were suspended, then reinstated, and by the time they were reinstated, the technology costs had changed. The Public Utility Commission was faced with the problem of what do we do? Almost analogous to what we have here. At the time, they were also PV-only projects, not PV with batteries, even the batteries were ready. We're able to renegotiate, much like we have, reductions in the price from the original price, but still there was the question of, given where technology was about to go, would this be the right thing to do? And indeed, as they looked forward, technology prices did drop. What the PUC did is very similar to what we are doing here. They asked a set of criteria questions. Will the ratepayers save money inclusive of the future tax credits that might accrue to them? Are the developers earning reasonable rates of return, including the sunk costs they've had for development? Is the final price lower than the original price? Then they also asked the policy questions. Will this make meaningful progress towards the RPS goals? Because they, like us, had RPS goals. Are the prices delinked from volatile fossil fuels? That's one of our laws in Hawaii. Was the process transparent? And was there due process for all of the parties in the negotiation? And then finally, they came to the recognition that it is more important to move forward than to experience delays in trying to seek additional batteries, even though they knew they were technologically possible by the time these projects were ready to be approved. So let's give you some background that other groups facing a very, very similar situation also use similar criteria. Next slide. In Puerto Rico, the decision is complicated because you have numerous forces, all of which need to be satisfied simultaneously. Because of the condition of bankruptcy and the credit rating that we're in, that has an impact on the returns developers must seek, which then has a negative impact on, of course, the price that ratepayers must pay, so it affects the savings to ratepayers. We have an FOMD mandate also driven from the bankruptcy as to the ceiling price. That has an impact on the ratepayers. That same FOMB mandate had an impact on the contracts, introducing additional risks, releasing these developers from the MTRs, particularly around the ramping requirement, as well as who builds and pays for the interconnect, which then introduces additional risks to grid operations, which would not have been there earlier. The funding delays for the batteries, 180 megawatts of batteries, megawatt hours of batteries that were on order that have not been delivered because the funding delays also push pressure on grid operations.
And then there's reputational risks, and then, of course, compliance with federal and state and territory laws. So all of these issues we looked at and said, where's the solution set that meets all of these criteria? Next slide. And we'll take you through it one by one. So from a methodological perspective, we use the following steps. We first started by saying, what is the additional financial cost that developers would have to recover to get fair returns given PREPA's current credit rating of CA? And then we also looked at a spectrum for full transparency to say what would that cost be if the RSA was approved and Moody's gave an upgrade to CAA all the way up to investment grade. We then looked at the developer returns they were actually receiving based on the confidential data they had provided PREPA procurement during the course this year, as well as the published IRP benchmarks to compare apples to apples against all of these to understand what was would they be earning the required unlevered rates of return on their bid prices or up to the FOMB ceiling. The third step was to then look at the fuel savings over the course of the 25-year period versus the ESM base plan submitted in the IRP for the units they're displacing, namely Palo Seco 3 in the beginning and the future integrated gas combined cycle turbine starting in 2025, including the value of RECs that they had bid in, and including a factor for avoided volatility, since it's a fixed contract, of around 8%, which was the long-term delta for reducing that risk. So we put all these factors together, we discount them at a blended rate, which includes, for the first few years, the higher discount rate because PREPA is higher risk. But then once the IGC comes on, PREPA would have had to have been investment grade, so we discounted at investment grade from there for those costs for all the future years. If the net present value of the energy savings of these plants exceeds the value of the interconnect that you now have to build on their behalf, then of course they are in the ratepayer interest as a savings in total. If for some reason that is not the case, that the net present value of the energy savings does not exceed the value what you have to build for them, then consumers are going to have to pay essentially for these plants. And that would fail the public benefits test. And this is including now risk adjustment and the value of RECs and all the rest. The next step was really around the grid. Sergeant Lundy has been engaged by PREPA over the course of this year to do an interconnection study, both the cost of interconnection, but also whether the actual physical plants, if they were to interconnect, would cause any kind of grid violations, transmission interconnection violations, and what those would be of what nature. I've been working with PREPA operations around that. And so we have to see if there's any proposals that would have major issues that would have to be resolved before you could, as a board, say, yes, we should move forward with these. And then lastly, given the delays around the BESS, we had to look at contractually, are there changes in the contract, the draft master contract that's currently being proposed for all these PPOAs that should be modified to make, protect the grid, create less pressure for PREPA, and perhaps help solve the problem for the developer as well. Other things that could work for all parties that might address this complicated situation. So that's our methodology. Next slide. I'm going to take you through the results. So taking it step by step. The first thing to remember is from the IRP that was filed and the work that Siemens did, PREPA already had a 4% additional risk from equity. That was a combination of the challenges of doing business in Puerto Rico and the challenges of doing PREPA itself. So this already set the PREPA required return on an unlevered basis at about 8.5% and 12.9% for return on equity. If you go all the way to the far right of that chart, that's the credit risk of where we are today at CA. That brings it up significantly by about 6 percentage points, which means our weighted average cost of capital, the unlevered rate, goes to 13.5%. In the middle is if it was upgraded one notch by Moody's. Still under investment grade, but one notch. So this is your spectrum of discount rates. Next slide. So if we apply those risk return factors plus the other factor that should be included, which is the true cost of hurricane insurance, to our benchmarks in terms of what we hold in our head as the fair price to pay in Puerto Rico, there are some important adjustments. So this table shows the years from 2019 through 2023. It has the original filing in the IRP, which would be, if we stand here today for a project being built in 2020, would be roughly $66 a megawatt hour, levelized cost of energy. But then we have to add things to it. Siemens did a wonderful job on the benchmarks, made all the adjustments except for one, which was the actual cost of hurricane insurance, which reported by all the participants and the check by us was indeed a lot higher than the standard insurance they had, that NREL had for the mainland. That has to be put in. That brings the cost to 75. The next two blocks are really at the different risk-return relationships for higher risks as PREP as a counterparty. We're at the bottom block, which is essentially $106 a megawatt hour is what's required to have a fair return for the risks developers are incurring if they meet they build at the same benchmark costs that Siemens laid out in the IRP. So that's without any prior development costs, just straight up. As you can see, as you move to the right, there is a combination of technology improvements, but also reduction in the ITC that says, as you look in the future for any given risk level, you're not really doing better than you're doing today. In other words, the future is not, even though the technology is going down in price, the ITC is being taken away from us faster. So absent a change in federal law, you're actually at sort of the bottom of, or the lowest point for the next several years, absent an improvement in your credit rating. So if you stay in the same credit rating, things don't get better. It's only if you improve your credit rating that a future RFP would be better than what you're seeing today. Now this is without curtailment. We'll get into the curtailment in a second. Next slide, please. So we then said, okay, we looked at all of this data. We put through a financial model, inclusive of all debt and tax effects, and we came with the following conclusions to answer the first question. First, based on 150 hours of curtailment, that's roughly 7%, which from the IRP covers all years but the last two, there's no developer is earning excessive returns against the required unlevered returns at 13.5%, which is PREPA's current counterparty risk. As a sensitivity, we said, well, what if it got better? What if it was at 11%? What if our counterparty risk got one notch better with 11%? Only one developer and the Siemens benchmark plant itself would earn the 11% return at one notch better than where we are today. The implication of this is actually that the FOMB ceiling rate of 10.5 cents escalated 2% with a 14.1% cap was in fact justified based on the risk return from the developer perspective. That is, from developer perspective, that rate gave them enough to start to make significant progress against these returns, was not giving them excessive returns, which was the first question to be answered. So no one's making excessive returns, and that's an important thing to observe. Even the Siemens benchmark plant doesn't make excessive returns. Next slide. We then run into the second test, which is at the prices bid up to the ceiling price, are ratepayers better off? And that's an important question. So how do we, again, we figure that out by taking the difference in what you're paying the developer versus the cost of avoided energy with the adjustments I made, the value of the REC, the adjustment for reduction of volatility. We run the present value of that backwards in time with a blended rate, 13.5% until 2023, 8.5% thereafter, and say, does that net present value per megawatt hour of energy savings times the megawatt hours lifetime over the project, including degradation, equal to or less than the cost that we have to incur to build their interconnect? If we're making money and you're getting returns above what it costs us, it's present value positive. So the first question is, do we even have savings to apply against the interconnection cost? And what we found is that at the ceiling rate, the savings there are not savings. It's negative. That is, it's costing us more, and the intuitive thinking around that is when the gas plant comes online, it's very inexpensive from the IRP. So if it's a very efficient plant, it's relatively expensive. And so all of those years you're generating losses. While the oil plants are online, you're creating savings. So when you run those two together at relatively modest discount rates, that means all those future losses really add up to the present, and so you don't generate savings. So that's an important finding. At the lower prices that some developers bid in, $100 a megawatt, $90 a megawatt, there are savings to be generated, and those savings, as it turns out, are enough to offset the interconnection costs for those plants. We ran two sensitivities, therefore, to see what additional insights we could gain. One is, we don't know, as we stand here today, whether the EPA will require the current plants we have online at any time in the next 5 years to have any mass compliance costs, either due to fuel switching or fines. If there was significant mass compliance costs, which we valued at fuel switching, it would have an immediate effect. Even 2 years of such a thing would have a massive benefit to ratepayers from having the solar plants avoiding that. Similarly, the price of RECs has dropped from where developers bid a couple of years ago to what they're bidding now. We put in 1.5, which was a reasonable median of what they were bidding. If the price was at 2 cents, then there becomes savings again for across all of us. One of the interesting aspects of the RECs is that to the extent we move plants forward, we don't need to buy any RECs, so therefore the price stays low. To the extent we don't move any plants forward, then we need to buy RECs, the price becomes high. So there's an iterative effect here. So we ran these different scenarios to give the board an understanding of where we are, but there is an important implication, which fundamentally is, even though the FOMB rate, the ceiling rate, was in fact pretty reasonable against the risk return for the developer side, it was not necessarily the right rate from the ratepayer side. That is, the ratepayers don't have that same assurance of getting savings from that self-same rate against the plan that we're putting forward. And it would really need to be reduced by about a half cent to about 10 cents for all parties to move forward and be better off. Next slide. So as we look then at this next test against these 16 projects, what we find is that 5 developers chose to bid under the FOMB ceiling rate and created net savings that well exceeded their interconnection costs and thereby saved ratepayers money. Now, it shouldn't be especially surprising that if you were to compare those same 5 against which set of plants were roughly more efficient in terms of their costs and compared to the Siemens benchmark, they were also the more efficient developers. So naturally, they were able to, in some ways, what they're doing is that they're passing on the savings. They're passing on the savings of their efficiency to PREPA in their bids. That's what they're essentially doing. They could have bid at the highest rate.
Passing the savings on the ratepayers.
They're passing the savings on the ratepayers. Because they're passing the savings on the ratepayers, they're passing the ratepayer test, which is a good thing. There were 11 developers that opted not to pass on and they bid at the full rate, and so they can't cover their interconnection costs. There's no value there to cover it. 3 of them had relatively high interconnection costs relative to their scale. That is what the Sergeant London number said. These are very expensive plants to interconnect, given they're also very small. And again, it's because of the way that the FOMB rate interacts with the fuel prices, saves money in the early years when you're running oil, loses money when you're running gas. Next slide. So now we turn to yet another piece of the puzzle, recognizing this is a lot to absorb and it's complex, but it's another facet we have to honor, which is, of course, operations in the grid. So based on the information provided by Sergeant Lundy, there were 2 plants that had interconnection violations that couldn't be readily resolved. One of them clearly had significantly large violations and probably cannot make it through this round. Another one, there's still some dialogue that could occur between operations and Sergeant Lundy to get the remaining problem resolved with the developer, and then might be able to go forward. But as we stand here today, there were 2. The other thing that was very important was that when we modified the MTRs in the contract, it exposes PREPA operations to a sudden drop in frequency due to sudden cloud cover during the day when these plants are all operating at their peak. And in Puerto Rico, all the solar plants tend to operate pretty coincident in terms of being sunny all the time anywhere in the island. So without the 180 megawatts of BESS that's awaiting P3 funding, you're going to have a gap. So if you essentially, without the MTRs, you would have a gap for that problem, which would be when the plants come online, which they would obviously try very, very hard for the end of 2020 to get the ITC. If they don't do it, they don't get the ITC, the full amount. And probably 2021 when these BESS batteries on your side of the meter would in fact be installed. So you would have this essentially 12 to 16-month gap potentially where you have this problem because you release them from the MTRs. So what's the set of solutions? Where's the space where this can all get resolved? So there was an earlier study done in 2014, 2015 by Siemens, which is roughly where the grid is, which is where the grid is roughly today, that said at the time the grid could absorb, if they complied with the MTRs, 580 megawatts of intermittent solar. That included some that was already online. Some has come online since then. If you run the math, including the distributed plants that come online, there's about 135 megawatts of intermittent capacity, wind or solar, that could be put on the grid based on that report safely, and everything would work, and there would be no excessive curtailments or whatnot. It's also clear that as a investment priority, and there's a real need in the control room for advanced weather forecasting capabilities, because this really helps the control room manage this kind of effect and also forecast day ahead and manage their operations better. We would hope the new concessionaire would immediately bring that in. But otherwise, there is a solution to this first problem. And there's two different ones, which we're recommending the first. The first solution is that we restate the requirement for the ramping MTR. That would require them to put on battery energy storage at roughly the ratio of 45% of their rated capacity times 10 minutes. So on a 20 megawatt plant, that's about 1.5 megawatt hours. Right. On a 30 megawatt plant, it's about 2.5 megawatt hours. So relatively modest. But you reduce the curtailment in the contract, the curtailment bank, to 100 hours. Those two effects end up essentially holding the developer neutral. That is, they're paying more up front, but they're also getting some tax benefits from the capital. By dropping the curtailment, they're getting a lot more value. They're going to finance it with that 100-hour curtailment. And so those two effects offset each other, benefit the grid, and everybody wins here. So that's an important aspect. We did try, in case, just to see if there's another way around it, about what else could work. The other way to do it would be if you didn't have the batteries on those plants, you would have to raise this gap year curtailment a lot to 600 megawatts, 600 hours essentially. That's extremely high. And then drop it in successive years because you've got this gap. Right. You'd have to run these plants in curtailed mode and use the headroom to help balance. And you'd also have to use some of your brand new repowered units, San Juan 5 and 6, to ramp a lot more and hold more than reserve, which would incur costs to prep as well. So we feel this first solution is more elegant. All parties win. PREPA gets a stronger grid. They're able to call on those batteries. Developers are held neutral, and it takes care of this critical problem that would otherwise occur. Next slide. So, based on all this, we have some recommendations. There are 5 projects that benefit the ratepayers, benefit the PREPA system, earn adequate developer returns, and we think they should be approved. These 5 meet all the criteria tests, and they will make the system stronger and better and more renewable in every way, and save money. There are 6 projects that, while they earn adequate returns, don't meet the ratepayer test. They could be viewed as insurance against more expensive outcomes that I mentioned. But recommendation is not to approve these at this time, but continue to have discussions with them. That there should be something like opening there where we might be able to find a solution. There were 3 projects that also didn't, that simply had interconnection costs that were too high to be justified by likely ranges of bids. They were very high, very small, very high interconnection costs, according to Sergeant Lundy. Then there were 2 projects, finally, as I said before, that had interconnection issues. One was pretty severe and not likely to resolve unless larger fixes were made to the grid surrounding it. So it's very, very unlikely that would go forward at all in this round. One deserves some further dialogue between Sergeant Lundy operations and the developers, see if it can be resolved and brought back, and might go into the further dialogue bucket. So that's the set of recommendations for which projects to approve. One more slide. Next slide. There are additional recommendations as relates to the contract and the PPOA, and a lot of this is to help balance the risks correctly. So the first, as I said before, is to require the MTRs, put them back in, use BESS, but in return, reduce curtailment to 100 hours. So that's the first thing. The second is actually to move, modify Article 15, which is the force majeure, to put the 300-hour curtailment cap there. In the old contracts, there was 400 hours of curtailment, roughly 300 due to weather, 120 or so due to the grid. And we're saying, no, put anything related to weather, there's a term right there, symmetrical, weather-related risks, including recovery period, put it where it belongs. So that cleans out the curtailment, makes it cleaner. There was also an issue around the timing and structure of having PREPA build the interconnect, which puts PREPA at risk. The way it's structured now is that requirement, if PREPA didn't have the funds to do it when its time came, would essentially place us in default pretty quickly with pretty large payments back to the developer because of the default. It's much better to say PREPA approves the design because it's your grid. You have to make sure this is designed correctly. Then before FNTP, you exercise your unilateral right to have the developer build it. So that puts them, they have to get it financed, they have to build it, they get the rights of ways, all those things. That is then charged back as a fee at our long-run cost of capital, 8.5%, amortized over 25 years, and the expectation that the developer will build. The last contractual change is because we now put the MTRs on, this reflects a point Siemens made back in 2014, which we agree upon, make it absolutely clear in the contract that PREPA can call on those developer batteries that will be installed to provide grid services even if it's running at full capacity, which means you don't be charging, have that battery in a charged state, because that way, if one of these events happen, all the other plants that we've approved can help address that event along with your own flexibility. So it only makes the system stronger. So those are the contractual terms. There's three other things we think would be helpful. We do think in 2020 it would be helpful to have an integration task force with PREPA operations, the new concessionaire, the developers, the customers, NREL, obviously some budget around technical support. Would help with this given the condition of the grid and the need to really coordinate amongst all the parties. While we've been doing all this work as PREPA, the customers have not been idle. There's actually a fair amount of customer-sided batteries out there. RMI's testimony in the IRP suggests they've done a survey where it could be up to 100 megawatt hours. That means it's a good idea for PREPA on its own to start the process of engaging some of the larger customers to see whether we can get bilateral contracts for some of their reserves. Again, for this gap year, it would be very helpful to have more reserves that we can call on as needed, and the customers have already paid for it. And then for the next RFP, a couple of thoughts. Probably doesn't make sense to do the next renewable RFP until PREPA's credit rating has significantly improved. That's why we laid out the table the way we did, so you can see that more clearly. When it does, of course, it will absolutely make sense. We probably shouldn't modify the MTRs the next RFP. It's caused a lot of operational challenges and headaches in terms of how to balance and adjust that, and puts too much of a call on your own plants. But instead, we should go actually double down, which is we should allow the developers to go ahead and bid, as they're doing in Hawaii and the mainland and other places, hybrid systems. Advanced hybrid systems have batteries, wind, along with BESS at multiple hours, and let them bid in the grid services. And then we have a market test to say, for the next round, what did that cost versus what's the cost of our own batteries? What combination of that do we want? And that gives us the most flexibility, because in the RFP level, you're just getting information about the market will offer you.
That's right.
That
So-
makes sense.
That concludes our findings and discussion. We thank you for your kind attention. Recognize it was a complex job, but just again to summarize, we tried to solve for three factors and chose projects that solve for all three. Will, in fact, PREPA ratepayers make money? So that you know as a board you're doing the right thing for the ratepayers, your customers. That's number one. Will the grid stay safe and become as reliable and more reliable by the way you're contracting and doing this? That's number two. Can we sleep at night knowing that even though we're paying higher prices than the mainland, these aren't excessive, they're actually underneath the risk return given our current credit rating, and actually we should be thrilled that people are willing to do business with us at this credit rating, so we don't feel that we're somehow getting an unfair advantage. And then because of the transparency, we can also see, frankly, that a lot of the plants that pass the test are very, very close in terms of what they're actually putting on the ground, the cost of putting on the ground for, to the Siemens benchmark. So we have some sense that we're running pretty much as efficiently as we can get as we're putting these plants in. So that's sort of your sleep well at night test. So the ones that passed all three tests, we really think should go forward and be approved at this time with no further delay, because they still have a small window where they could order the inverters, get the additional 4% ITC, and start the journey towards a renewable future. Thank you for your time.
Well done.
Okay. We're back to the rule of 2 questions per board member. So, any questions?
Just have one, actually. The estimated duration of these shovel-ready projects is like how much time in terms of like from start or breaking ground until being operational?
So,
At least from, like, if you remember and from the top of your mind, from the ones that we should
right,
consider.
for the ones to consider, so several of them look like from the sort of site visits and where they were that they could actually make the COD date of 12/31/2020. So this is some of them that are going to try very hard and have a reasonable shot at it based on what they submitted. So we'll see. They are certainly motivated because once you approve, it goes on them whether they can meet that COD date or not, as opposed to you're not taking that risk because the alignment is strictly on them. So we would hope that some of them would actually try very hard to make it if we could approve now and they could start to grandfather in some of those, the 5% rule, the inverters essentially.
Thank you, Mr. Data. Very, very good, enlightening presentation. Now, the question is for the contract committee. So we have about 64, 65 contracts. We have a direction of how to go with 15 contracts. A resolution is being prepared to vote on. However, we have a bankruptcy process, so we need to decide what to do with the other remaining 50 contracts. And the contract that will not be awarded of those 15, we need to decide it because bankruptcy basically is going to resume early next year. So that's a homework that we as a board need to do. So we don't have a bankruptcy process closed and with this contract still standing and undecided.
I think what Kyle's analysis said, we have 16 contracts out of those 65 that we're really focused on. Of those 16, it's recommended that 5 go forward. I know I'm repeating myself. That there should be continuing discussions on 6 of them, and the others need a lot more work, and 2 need to get rejected. So that's the criteria we're going to go under. I think it's also appropriate that we have communications with the PREB and with the FOMB about these projects. That's the approval process that we have to go through. So we will start that process on the 5 projects immediately with PREB and with FOMB. The other projects will seek to have continuing discussions and use a similar process to go to PREB and FOMB if they pass our screen. We want it to be transparent. We want everybody to know the criteria that we're using to move the projects forward. We want to demonstrate we're serious about renewables. So that will be what we'll do.
But just to remember the board that we have a window what is related to bankruptcy and the
Yes, we
treatment of
do.
this specific project, so we don't kind of forget, and the bankruptcy process is over, and we still have responsibility over 50-something projects that are not feasible.
Well, the target that's in the in Act 17, and as we recall in the IRP, is 2,200 megawatts with 500 megawatts of battery backup. So the projects that we're looking at now do not achieve the 2,200 megawatts. So this will be an ongoing process. If that was your question, yes, it will be an ongoing process. But now we have a criteria, which is very transparent. Everybody will understand the criteria. All the developers who are serious about working with PREPA have to recognize we're looking to get the best deal for the customer. We want to make sure those projects are feasible projects with not high interconnection costs and so forth. But we will continue to try to achieve the goal of having the 2,200 megawatts, a 500 megawatt backup, and the overall goal would be to achieve the renewable portfolio standard that's been set out in Act 17.
Okay, any other one, anybody else have? Charles, you have a question?
Just a statement, I'd like to congratulate management for the benefit of the public listening in. When these contracts first started, they were 15 cents per kilowatt hour. and the management has been out beating on people, begging, cajoling, bargaining, whatever, and you got them down to 10, and that's a massive savings for our customers. And the other thing I would point out is that Kyle's data should have, and it did, look at the direct cost. There's also indirect costs that are not in there that make these even better, and that is the health benefits from the decrease in particulate emissions, SOx, NOx, MATs, and everything. That's not in the analysis, it shouldn't have been, but this also makes these even more valuable to the island.
Okay. Anything else on this matter?
No, Mr. Chair.
It was a good job.
Yeah.
Honored to be of service to you.
Very good job.
Are we gonna have a resolution on this, or what's the plan?
Yeah, we don't have it ready. The resolution is, I mean, we are clear that they're the 5 projects they pass through.
All right,
And there's 6 that they're gonna go back. If they wanna pass through, they have to make some adjustments.
yep.
And there are other things, but that's administrative, and the resolution is gonna be, being finalized, since everything has been done today. And
With regards to that, Mr. Chair, if I may,
Yes, sir.
procedurally, we are gonna work on some language with General Counsel's office. And once that is in the form of a draft, it will be circulated to.
So it won't be today?
It won't be
Yeah,
today.
yeah.
Right, that was what my question was.
Right.
Mr. Chair, I have a procedural matter. It's related to the fuel contract.
Yes.
Just to know that on the previous meeting, it's noted that we did not vote on the diesel contract. That is still pending for vote. And now that we have the presentation from Mr. Lopez and it's approved by the FOMB, I believe we should vote on that.
Okay, so you wanna proceed
A point
with
of
the-
order into it, I second it.
I agree, that's no problem.
If we have a motion,
We have a
Should
motion
be
presented
circulated.
by
The
Member
motion.
Torres, and I believe it was seconded by Vice Chair Hill.
Okay,
do we have a written motion?
No, we
No,
no.
just made it.
So my recommendation will be that we circulate the written motion for consideration of board members, because that is a very delicate subject, and we have the approval of the FOMB.
Well, but actually, don't we need to approve it today?
we need to approve.
We
it.
need to
Just
approve
to
it today.
remain that is still
Because if
pending
not,
for
it will
vote.
turn into a matter that is discussed in public and cannot be discussed afterwards.
Right,
So we have to
Have
approve
to
it
deal
today.
it today, so, and so we can
Exactly.
state a motion and keep it in our minds. I think it's not gonna be that long, is it?
You
So
make
what's
a
your
motion just to
Well,
a point of
the
order.
motion should be for the secretary to summarize in writing the presentation of Mr. Lopez for the board for consideration, so we can vote on it.
No, we have to decide today. So we
Tomas,
have to have a
you
mo-
can present, does anybody present a motion?
All right, I'll make a motion that we approve the diesel contract, award it to Puma as was discussed in Mr. Lopez's presentation.
And I second that motion, and I want to say, like, I second your
Okay.
motion in terms of like the point of order that you were making into it, which is
Yes.
correct. And I second your motion in terms of like
The motion
the
to approve.
substance into it,
Substantive.
and it's a matter of the essence, because the numbers that were presented into it and the contract were based on the assumptions, obviously, 11/21, that means tomorrow,
Right,
and if
Exactly.
we don't comply with it, then the future savings in the next year, even though we have like a 3 cents increment for those 4 months, now into it, might be more.
and the
Right.
full summary and the full report is on diligent, we all have it, so it's just, it can just be attached.
Part of
to
the
that,
record.
So,
So I have
we
a
have
point
a
of order.
motion, we have a second, does anybody against?
For the resolution.
Yeah,
Not having anybody against, everybody's in favor, it's approved.
Yeah, it's
So
approved.
so you live on.
Okay,
Good point.
so we go to the next step, David,
David, Mr.
since you're with the contracting, you wanna go with the resolutions at this time?
Yes, well, why don't I do that? So we have three resolutions that we're seeking to get approval by the board. Let me at least try to provide a little bit of a context. The first resolution deals with the NIPA mutual aid agreement. I'm going to ask Director Jose Ortiz to talk about that. You may recall that following Hurricane Maria, NIPA was one of the most aggressive companies in helping us to restore electric service. NYPA's been working with us since that time to improve our grid operations. And so we have a resolution to continuing the support of NYPA. We also have a resolution to authorize our low-interest loan for our water pollution facilities. And then finally, we're all about providing greater safety to our customers through street lighting. Mr. Chair, I don't have that resolution before me today, but I would like to have some limited discussion on what we're seeking to do to install additional street lighting for the public to protect public safety. So, Mr. Ortiz, if you could talk about the NYPA agreement.
Yes, actually, we have the NYPA people there to make a quick
Oh,
presentation.
that'd be great.
That would be great. Yes, please. Call them in. But certainly, NYPA was here since the day after the hurricane. They have been helping mostly on the substations.
And for our ratepayers, can we say who NYPA is?
New York Power Authority, sorry.
And it's a nonprofit, right? It's a.
Normally I complain about that. People start talking about things
Yeah,
that they
too many
normally do
acronyms.
every
Yeah,
day.
yeah.
And I fall in the same.
And NYPA is a nonprofit.
It's a non-profit, it's the utilities.
It's a sister organization owned by the government
Is-
of New York and a nonprofit.
Okay, sorry to interrupt.
It's a power company for the state of New York. It's a public company. It's our, as Mr. Bailey said, it's our sister, entity. And they have been supplying, resources to reconstruct in the response stages, but also on the helping putting together the scopes and DDDs on the permanent work stages. So we're planning to extend their support. And in the meantime, we are also running a request for proposals for, firms that will be, consulting firms to help us in the longer run with the approval of FEMA. So NYPA, I would say the main representative here has been Alex Echevarria, who has been here since I think the 21st of September, right? Or so.
Yeah, right. The first plane that landed here after Hurricane.
There's still some winds around. And I asked Alex to present, some of the support they're providing to PREPA up to this point.
As they're getting this loaded, I just want to recap a little bit of the history NYPA has here.
We having a Bob.
We came here shortly after. Okay. So you can just
This seat, I gotta
So
jump.
this is really we came here pretty much the first plane ride that landed. We touched down and it was chaos everywhere. NYPA we sent in 2 waves, 6 days apart, 24 engineers here to help any way we can. We befriended Daniel Hernandez, or he befriended us. We quickly found an area that we can help. While all the chaos was going on, restoration and just surviving, we were able to find a mission. Daniel's help and guidance, and his text that he allotted to us, and we provided that we did a mission of doing substation assessments throughout Puerto Rico. But one of the things that we highlighted for that was that there was 18, one in Punta Lima, which was really destroyed, where they needed attention. So we developed an additional report for the 17 flooded stations here that we're really putting a high priority with FEMA to fund. And we're actually meeting, as we speak, to try to get immediate funding for this, because it's been 2 years and they're high risk substations. So these are some of the pictures of the flooded substations. So obviously, believe it or not, this is energized right now, and it's a struggle to get FEMA to approve that when you have such evidence of destruction and just bad conditions. But before I continue, though, we did after the mission we had with the substations, we did come back as part of the New York State contingent with 500 linemen and people to administer
And we really, our first mission was to tackle San Juan. So that's one area that we came in here, we're linemen now, for restoration effort. We were here from pretty much November all the way through April doing restoration. And we, one of the first areas we came in here with was Old San Juan. It was NYPA, Con Edison, with a lot of trucks. They were the biggest, probably 80 strong personnel there. But we had 500 total when you count everything up. And we really worked like an army, going through all San Juan, spreading out. And then we didn't leave a neighborhood until the lights were on. So that was the one thing that we decided to do. We're going neighborhood to neighborhood until the lights are on. There was one particular story that I was happy to be there at the time where we went into the neighborhood. It was like 5 o'clock, turned on the lights, everyone was happy. It turned back off. Go in, find out there was a transformer that was shorting out, go fix that. Lights came on, turned back off. So then we actually traced it to this lady's house where she was shorting everything out. Wow. So we had to kind of just tell her very, very nicely, you know, we're sorry, we traced it to you, but we really don't want to leave here without the lights on. We'll promise come back, we'll send somebody there the next day to try to see what's going on with that. So she was, understanding. We bypassed her, the lights came out to the neighborhood, and we went back there the next day to take care of her. So it was a very rewarding experience. So now we're here full-time, NYPA, now we're 500 people, but a little force of 3 full-time, and then people from NYPA coming in from New York to help out. And when needed, we could go to contractors for some very defined scope of work. So we can go to the next slide. So right now we're working on the flooded substations, just making sure we got all the documentation that FEMA wants, any iterations. We have, they're spread out throughout the island here. So it's a pretty uniform, catastrophic event, obviously, that Puerto Rico experienced. The next one. And apart from that, we're also going to an area where, okay, these substations are going to get rebuilt. They're going to be rebuilt to new codes and standards, and the new standard now is a modern digital type substation. So what's needed for that is a lab. So we're helping PREPA even down to, the details of here. Okay, we need a lab, how can NYPA help to get something put together for that? So we're making good headway in putting a test lab together for these new substations. And another area that we've been helping significantly, especially making a case with FEMA, is the criticality of how Vieques and Culebra stand right now. It's they're tethered very lightly with the mainland. Doesn't take much of a hurricane, could be just a strong storm to lose the connection. Mr. Ortiz called us in back in February to talk to, I think, Mike Byrne, who was the head of FEMA, to make the case to say, leave those generators in Vieques, don't pull them out, because even though we got the connection back in, it doesn't take much of a storm to get it kicked out. So we were there to kind of make a case, and my experience in protection is, I make a case, try to make a strong case, but it is what it is. They pulled them out, so right now we're in a situation there that we're working really diligently to try to get funding to start. Maybe have some kind of a warehouse so they can locate those generators back in Vieques. Right now they moved to Ponce, but they're in a delicate situation. So we're prioritizing this as a FEMA project to get started right away. And of course, it's not just Vieques, Culebra, it's all of Puerto Rico. So we're working in all the different projects on grid hardening, running cases to provide justification on undergrounding, any type of new stations that will make the grid more resilient. So we're approaching this similar to how NYPA would do, or any utility would do in the States, where if you want to do some resiliency, you got to show the studies. So NYPA is providing those studies for PREPA for justification. And then, one of the areas that we provided a study for is the Farmer Corridor, the Humacao District. That's a heavy industry area, generating lots of money for Puerto Rico. So we did those studies for that. And also with that too is also in the bottom here, there's 102 critical distribution feeders. We have a new resource here that was working diligently on that. for NYPA to provide for PREPA on the justification and identifying the critical feeders throughout Puerto Rico and at every municipality in the island. And also, we have we're a hydro company as well, so we just finished doing last week a 2-day training session for dam safety. This is the agenda for the course. It was attended by PRASA, PREPA, and some local dam safety, dam officials throughout Puerto Rico, and we had like 30 to 40 people in attendance, and it was very well received. And also, one of the other things is the Energy Control Center for PREPA is the vital area of awareness for Puerto Rico. There's the energy management system that Puerto Rico that PREPA has that was never utilized, one tool, and the tool is really like a gut check for the operator. It's called the state estimator. It provides operators with a real-time view of the power grid to help them in their decisions. So if like for example, the reason we came and we identified this was during the island-wide blackout on April 18th of 2018. We came in here to do like a taproot investigation and analysis. And one of the things we saw was that the Energy Control Center did not have a state estimator up and running. So we worked on it, 2 weeks, for 2 weeks, every quarter, we would come in, keep on working on it. And we finally had it ready for Hurricane Dorian when it rolled through. Fortunately, it wasn't a big event, but we had Brent here who's been providing that support, come in, man the state estimator while the hurricane was coming through. Fortunately, we were good. And he is coming in a couple of weeks to provide training, like for 2 weeks, just rolling through the operations team, all the system operators, to kind of help them know how to maneuver and work with the state estimator. And lastly, during the rolling blackouts, I guess, that occurred when we had some units out of service, NYPA had contracted a small team of generating consultants to work with Danielle and his group to do assessments for all the major base load units. And try to do it as quick as I can. If any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Any questions?
So, Mr. Ortiz, what are you seeking? Could you just explain the resolution, please?
Yes, we're seeking to extend the memorandum of understanding with this sister company in New York, and we're basically capping that support to $2 million to pay for their services, for their expenses, basically. And I would like to add to that, I have to thank, Gil Quiñones, the actual CEO of New York Power. He has been there not only for this, but for many other endeavors that we need some support in Washington and other places, for Puerto Rico, to Governor Cuomo. And actually, I had to introduce Ruth Colon, who is a Puerto Rican, who is right now one of the top managers in NYPA, but also used to be a Secretary of State for the state of New York in the past. So Ruth.
Hi, nice to meet you. Thank you. I'm from Caguas, so not only Puerto Rico. I'm going to go there. I'm from Caguas, so I'm very pleased to be here, and I'm very proud. And en lo que podamos servirles a la orden.
Yeah, she's been very supportive always.
Yeah, thank you for all the support that we've got. We really appreciate it.
So we're looking for that cap for the MOU so that we can formalize better than before. Since after the hurricane we have kind of an open-end MOU, we want to start formalizing that.
Okay, makes sense.
And it's reimbursable?
It's reimbursable by FEMA, like 85% of it, because there are some other tasks we're requiring, like assessment of generation and so on, some particular and punctual issues.
And who are they? They're going to be working with PMO, with Fernando?
Since mostly is disaster related, they're working with Arturo, but some other endeavors with Fernando Padilla.
Well,
I just want a quick comment, Mr. Chairman. I think this is a great agreement, because you remember after the storm, PREPA had no friends. It really hadn't made any arrangements anywhere, right? And so to have the New York Power Authority as a very close working friend for the long-term future, I think is critical. because it gives us access to the best thinking in power, gives us access to great people. There's always been a long relationship between New York and Puerto Rico. And remember, this is a nonprofit. We're getting these folks essentially at cost, and I think that's a great deal for our ratepayers.
That's a great point. And I have to add, piggybacking to what you just said, is that we have basically the same regulators. You know, they deal with FEMA region 2 the same way
Yeah.
we do, and
All
with
the same
EPA
players.
and all that. So there are similarities, and in order to unify codes, standards, and regulations, that will help a lot.
Mr. Ortiz, what are we doing to maximize technology transfer, because we're having great support from NIPA? So what are we doing so that knowledge remains long-term here in Trump?
Well, that's a very important point. Recently, it was approved the codes and standard that will be used for the development of the whole grid. Certainly, it's something we had to discuss with the newcomers on the T&D system and the newcomers on the generation system. But basically, we agreed on the standards, basically codes and standards. Certainly, I have to add that whoever comes to either design or help us on the grant management or program management have to have a big portion of local industries, so that we can keep here, all the knowledge, and not only the knowledge, but a big part of the capital that we're going to be investing through federal funding. So it's a bifold. It's a very important point.
So, Mr. Chair, I would recommend for the committee who address this matter to work with Mr. Ortiz to identify point of contacts, POCs, so we have a strategy for enhancing technology transfer.
It's important to add to what Tomas just said, is that Puerto Rico will be kind of the benchmark of the future of any big investment in the U.S. due to its public policy, due to the amount of funding. And so it's going to set a lot of benchmarks for the future. It's very important, the technology transfer, so that Puerto Ricans eventually, or local Puerto Rican firms, can export that knowledge to everywhere else.
Good.
Great. Any other questions? Any other suggestions? I know we have a resolution.
Yes.
Do we have a motion? Charles? Move the resolution.
I'll
Do we?
second the motion.
Fernando seconds. Any against? All in favor? It's approved. So let's go to the next one.
Okay, so the second resolution, Mr. Chair, relates to our low-interest loan for our water pollution control facilities. Going to have Jaime Lopez speak to that.
Sure. Yeah, I'd like to call Daniel. Mr. Daniel Hernandez, the head of...
Right there.
Daniel?
Vete a la silla aquí, mira. Right here.
La tibia. Not the hot seat.
Yes, this case was discussed in length at the contracting committee. I would like Daniel to summarize the request and the resolution that we are requesting to move.
Good afternoon. We're talking about the revolving.
Sí.
Okay. Yes, good afternoon. So, just a summary of what we discussed yesterday. PREPA developed different projects under the Clean Water State Revolving Fund. This program provides two types of funding. One is the grants. We have already around 15 million approved in grants for developing these projects. And second, low interest loans. Right now we are working with 4 new projects. The first one is Aguirre Power Plant wastewater treatment plant improvements. The second one is Palo Seco and Aguirre Power Plant fuel oil tanks rehabilitation. The third one is Public Light Pollution Reduction Project. And the fourth is South Coast Irrigation Channel System improvements. For the total cost of all these projects is around 43.4 million, from which we already have 15.8 already approved, and we present to the agencies the new proposal of 19 millions to develop this project. In terms of what we are requesting is to have the approval of this board to have a loan in the amount of 8.6 million at 2% of interest. These projects are very important for us, especially to comply with environmental regulations. For instance, to comply with the NPDES permit program. This is only one example. And for the reliability of our power plants as well. So there is a lot of benefits, not only for PREPA and for our customers. So what we are looking for today is to present this project to approve the loan of 2% in the amount of $8.6 million and authorize the CEO to take all necessary actions, including submitting this project to the review and approval of the corresponding authorities, like PROMESA, execution of the agreement, and the note in order to carry out the provision of this resolution. So if you have any questions regarding the projects or regarding the purpose of the loan, just...
Tomas.
Mr. Hernandez, there is only one resolution for the deep projects, I understand?
Yes, in the resolution, there is a list of the projects that describe all...
It covers all the 4 projects.
That's right, that's right.
I have a recommendation, Mr. Chair, is to list the total amount of the projects within the resolution, since we only have listed the loan amount of 2%. So we should list what is this for, what will cost. So we have the real picture, so when we came for future approval, we already know that we already reviewed this and we have a ballpark amount where we can be.
I would support that.
I'll support it.
That's a friendly amendment to the
Yes.
Okay, so what, you want me to review the resolution? Is that the
Yes.
requirement?
Reviews, yeah.
Yes, to include the total amount of the cost and more or less to summarize what you just said.
Okay.
So you can compare the amount of the loan against...
Yeah,
the
we
number
can do that up front.
Okay. Any other thing right now? Well, with that spending until the resolution is is revised, and then from there we'll work it out. All right. But I know it's benefit, and I remember all the presentation.
That's right.
I think it's just carrying what is on the presentation to put it in the resolution.
No problem.
Okay.
I will do.
Mr. David?
The last topic, Mr. Chair, we don't have the resolution completed. This all relates to public lighting for additional safety. And I guess, Mr.
Yes.
Lopez, you're going to talk about that?
Yes, we would like to give the board an update on where we are in terms of the installation of, reinstallation of public lights around the island, and what the next steps are regarding this critical project. So for that, I'm going to pass it over to our Director of T&D, Jose Sepulveda, who will give you such update and next steps. Jose.
Thank you, Director. This project, as you know, has been worked since months ago. We are right now on an 80+% of completed. So makes every sense of putting funds to end it. We want to complete the task to give a reliable, straight light grid to our public. So it's due to two major things. One is the percentage of completion, and also that brings security to our customers. So we have our contractors right now working on this project. We understand that the funds are going to be able for this year until the end of December. So we are respectfully asking for a $20 million to end the project for the next 3 or 4 months to complete it, maybe January, February, until March, I think.
That money will be spread through the contractors we already have
Okay.
on board, which earn the position to help us through a competitive process.
Good.
And we're pushing very hard to see if we can get as much people as possible with the lighting done before the Christmas period. So the best way to do it, and probably the cheapest way, since they are mobilized already, is to inject a little bit more money to just complete the works.
I'm confused.
Me too.
Because when we were in the committee meeting, I understood that the funds were almost finished, and you needed that to finish by the end of December, the entire island.
The entire island. That's
Today I
correct.
hear that you have funds until the end of December, and you need the funds for the next.
It was just
So
sort
we
of-
need to make
Wait,
clear.
we haven't heard the answer, so.
Yeah, it
You
was
asked a
that's
question.
what I just said. We have funds. We need funds for the contractors to end this project beyond of December. But PREPA has just begun being part of a project, so we are going to continue PREPA and the contractors at the same time. So we want all the efforts, the contractors, for the end of December, and then to have the project as a way that can PREPA assume it for the normal repairs of street lights.
Okay, so you have like 80 plus, the plus can be 89 or 82 or 81.
Right.
I'm assuming that you need $20 million, so based on that, and I'm not that good at math actually, I'm assuming this project costs $100 million?
No.
We are asking that because we understand that right now we are about 20,000 street lights out right now.
Mhm.
20,000.
No, because the project was executed with internal resources as well. So that
Yes.
80% is a combination of outside contractors and internal
That's
crews.
right.
And mayors.
And mayors, yeah.
So it has been spread through many ways.
Regardless.
What the intention
100
was.
is 100, and 80%, I mean, like, you still have like 20% to complete it, and you're requesting $20 million to request that 20%.
So the $20 million would.
Yeah,
would
the
complete the
20%.
project through the end of the year?
The part that is designated to the contractors.
Right.
Sorry, I didn't.
Oh, okay.
got
The
it.
project
now,
is
now.
divided. It's
got
PREPA
it.
part and contractor.
And this
Yeah,
is for the
okay.
contractors?
For the
This is for
contractors.
contractor part.
Got it.
It's
Okay,
just
that's-
contractors, but
Yeah, that's clear.
it will be important to highlight that we haven't finished that yet because we were close to 2 months, basically on kind of a strike from the linemen who were doing this
That's right.
every day. So that's why we have to pass all these to contractors.
Okay.
That's right.
Well,
Mr. Chairman, I just comment that I've really liked this project overall through the months that we've done it. It was competitively procured. It spread the work out across, as Jose Ortiz just said, to several municipalities as well, who
Right.
have their people doing the work. We have several, 4 Puerto Rican companies working
No,
on
like
it?
13, right?
13, well,
13.
obviously, I missed by 7, or, I mean, 9. But I think it's a great way to get Puerto Ricans very involved in standing up our own lighting problem. We've already seen much of that improve, and I think it's a great goal to get this done by the end of this calendar year.
what?
I have a point of order and a comment. The point of order is to avoid this kind of confusion, similar to the one we have with the diesel contract. I would recommend to have all resolutions prepared prior to the meetings, because in this specific point, not only is resolution, there is nothing on diligence related to tourist lighting. So I have a question.
Exactly.
Is this related to the $15 million project that was discussed in the last meeting in Mayagüez? Is this the same public lighting?
I don't know what else.
Yes?
It's the same.
Okay, so this is continuation of that discussion?
Yes, it is.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
But your point is well taken about having the resolutions in advance. That's why in the beginning I said we didn't have the resolutions. That will not happen in the future. We will have the resolutions here so you can all see it. And then we can participate and actively vote on it.
So we later will get the resolution,
Yes.
and I think it would be good to have a summary of where we are at, how much we have spent.
Yes.
We have that, we have that.
And what
That
we
should be
need
Up to
to
date.
achieve, and
Yes.
What are we doing today?
we just,
Time of
we
completion.
just got the information, gathered the information, and whenever we get the resolution and the report,
Then we'll vote on it then.
my concern is, my only question is, if we need to vote before our next board meeting,
Yeah. That's my next
or
question.
we have,
Yeah,
that was my
absolutely.
question, or we have enough funds
To carry over to
to
December.
carry up to December.
No,
That's
some
my- that was
companies
my
will-
question when I,
Some companies will exhaust funding between this and next week.
okay,
And the delay on presenting a resolution was because we didn't have ready until the past few days what was the scenario was going to be. We didn't know clear if we were going to get and reach an agreement with the linemen. And we also had to check the availability of mayors to continue with some of what they're doing. So we had to put all that together. There are too many participants on this initiative. Since we have now that clear, we basically decide very close to the board what we want to do.
Mr. Chairman, may I make a suggestion, please? Could we table this item for 20 minutes, have the staff that are involved in this issue draft a resolution that we could consider and get this done today?
Yeah.
if you feel comfortable, yes.
I really think if we're trying to push to get this done by the end of the calendar year, every day delay
It
matters.
Yep.
Right about that.
Okay, so, let's do one thing, let's keep with the meeting.
Yep.
And
And then
after
put it at the
we
end.
finish, we put a stop to the meeting, do the
Yeah,
resolution.
just come back to this item.
And come back and vote on it.
Yeah, so, but staff should be developing a resolution now.
Okay, so,
So whether it's Mr.
Mr. Chair, another thing,
Buvada or
with this approval, we are gonna have chance to renegotiate the prices with the companies also.
So do we?
next calendar year? When would we
No,
have?
for this one.
Oh, with this one,
This
okay, all right.
This-
So do we?
Since they are mobilized already, we're saying, listen, guys, your cost is lower
Yeah,
from
I
now
understand
on.
that now, yes.
But not to exceed.
Not to
We have
exceed, yeah.
instructions so that Astrid and Jose can put together something in writing?
Yeah,
They
something,
should be this excuse from the meeting then.
yeah. So can
Can they be excused from the
they
meeting?
be
Mr. Chair?
excused so they can go?
yeah, they can be excused,
When they come back to the
we go to the customer service, committee now.
Yep. Okay,
So, you can, who's gonna write it? José, tú te vas,
No, Sepúlveda.
No,
Sepúlveda
José Sepúlveda, José Sepúlveda, with Astrid. You're welcome to take my office.
Astrid, you're welcome to use either the chairman's office or my office to draft
I
something.
can,
okay?
perfect.
great.
Okay, so let's go
Meantime-
to the customer service
Customer Service Committee.
meeting.
So, Mr. Chairman, in the Customer Service Committee, we met largely on the public meeting. We were meeting previously on what the public meeting would look like, and so we took a look at how our first try post-Maria at a public meeting went in Mayaguez. If you would, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to allow a couple minutes to just get some general comments about what we thought worked or didn't work about the public meeting. So maybe if I could just open it up to people to offer their thoughts first. It's a general rule in our committee, we thought it went quite well. It was well prepared. We thought there were a couple of things we might focus on in the future, better timing for when the press conference might happen, some efforts we might make to get a few more mayors out, a few more customer service kinds of issues to the meeting. But overall, you know, our take was it was very well planned, well executed. Oh, translation, of course, for us non-Spanish speakers was a problem, but we'll solve that. But by and large, I thought it was a pretty good outreach. But I think it'd be good to hear from others, not...
Okay, and before continuing, another thing that was mentioned, there's a
Yeah.
letter that's gonna be written to all the mayors,
Harris, that's right.
giving a follow-up of what happened.
That's
and
right.
Everybody knows what's going on. And actually, we did it there, but we need to do it again. That it was a great effort from the entire working team. Everything ran pretty well from the beginning to the end. Very professional, and even the linemen that went there, they actually were very professional. It was a very professional.
Actually, by the next week, they were at the table.
Right, so-
The UTR members, so. Anybody want to join in? Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to mention, it's unfortunate that Sepulveda had to leave, but in the meeting, in the public between the public meeting and the meetings with the mayors and representatives, Rincón, the municipalities of Rincón, Mayagüez, Hormigueros, and Cabo Rojo were represented. They discussed with the board, not only with the board, but with the management of T&D and customer service specifically, specific issues related to, in instances, customer service, and on the T&C side, issues related to local substations, feeders, voltage issues, vegetation intrusion, and relocation of lines.
And street lighting.
And street lighting.
Yeah.
And last Monday in the Infrastructure Committee, Mr. Sepulveda presented a report of each and every item that was discussed there and the action plan that have been taken to address these. So.
And actually, the discussion we just had about street lighting was a direct response to some of the things we heard from the mayors. So I think our next two tentatively planned dates will focus on Ponce and Arecibo in the next coming months. And I don't know if we've set out any formal announcements yet, so I won't pre-stage you on the dates, but we have identified the next couple of dates.
Well, at least I think your committee decided that it's gonna be January.
Yeah, it'd be
Ponce,
January and March.
I think the 29th of
Yeah,
January.
Yeah, January and March.
So we need to make sure the facilities are available and everything, Ponce.
We were
That way we'll
identifying,
be in January in Ponce.
we're identifying January 29th for Ponce and March 25th for Arecibo.
Okay. Oh, no viewers, but what?
That's it. I think unless we have any other comments about the public meeting, Noriette or Jose or anyone want to chime in, or we just got through it and it went well.
Okay. Do you have anything else concerning your committee?
I do not.
Dismissed.
No, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
But I want to make sure, well, we're
Wait,
gonna do it.
I'm sorry, did I skip something that Noriette you wanted to talk about?
No. I mean,
Okay,
we discussed the status of the call centers
Yeah,
that we're gonna be
you know.
in place at 100% on December. Basically, everything is just
Moving
turning
along.
fine right now.
Yeah, you're moving on target. You're at 2 minutes now, you said? 2-minute response time?
Yes, we do have a 2 minutes
Yeah,
response.
that's kind of wild, from 45 minutes, was it, or 50 minutes? You know, so, and the other thing I want to point out is these are Puerto Rican companies we're contracting with, right? We're developing, you talked about technology transfer, what we're trying to make sure is that when we do reach out to companies to expand our ability, to leverage our ability, we're doing it with Puerto Rican companies.
Totally, yeah, absolutely.
No,
I
you're
apologize.
there, that we were speaking the other day about the renewable contracts. So it's good at this time just to clarify a little bit that your department is working still with Act 17 and making clear with all the different consumer rep offices what are the standards and the changes that are being done. Can you go a little bit more?
Yes, after
on
the
that?
Act 17 was approved, there were so many changes that need to be in place in PREPA. But at the same time, there's some areas of the Act that need to be cleared by PREP. That's why we are, in the meantime, we just create some instructions, internal instructions, with the cooperation of some of my colleagues here at PREPA, just to make sure that all departments related with net metering accounts and cases know exactly what to do and how to handle those changes after the law was approved.
And the way I understand is there's some things you're working with planning and T&D, because even though Law 17 mandates to execute so many projects, you're worried about the safety of the consumer, and so you're making sure, and all the departments are making sure that everything is in compliance, even though Law 17 requires not to do any planning at all.
Basically, right.
Basically, you want to make sure that everybody's safe.
Exactly. We've been discussing, that's a long process, and there's a lot of departments, not only from Customer Service Directorate, but from others directorates that need to be in place. So we got together and we discussed where are the points, the more important points that we need to get through and make our teams and our crews to understand how it's going to work. But basically, we're discussing safety and obviously the electric system,
Right.
safety too, with this new renewables, new customers that are getting into the grid.
Right? It's not that we're against it. It's just we want to make sure everybody's safe.
Yeah, totally. We're not against it. No, that's not.
Okay. And meters are arriving finally, and things are moving.
Well, we've been kind of struggling with that a little bit, just to make sure that the new proposal got all the technical issues resolved. Some of them we just discussed with them, and they're fixing it. So we're still waiting for them to arrive soon, because it's something that we're really struggling with right now.
There is about a 3 to 4 week delay on the delivery of the first batch. The samples that were sent out from the first batch had some issues that they needed to comply from the technical side. Just to clarify, they were not related to the accuracy of the meters.
Yes.
Okay, they were related to other covers and
Components
seals,
or
components,
parts of the
etc. The vendor has made the changes in the batch, and it's in the process of being delivered. So there's about a 3 to 4 week delay on the
One of
first.
the vendors, not with the two or with the two?
The vendor that was selected for the original order that was back in June, ¿verdad? Más o menos.
Okay.
Yeah, and then but then the other order that was made, which is the contract, the kind of the just-in-time contract, that would be corrected for that order. Of course, all subsequent orders are being corrected out of this first batch.
Now, I know Prep and Net is also hoping you get these meters moving, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so how's that effort been going with Prep and Net?
Well, with PrepAnet, what we've been doing is we've been removing some of the meters and pull them out from the field and replace them with new smart meters, the ones that we have in inventory. So what we're doing, we are establish our priorities at the Customer Service Directorate. We need to install them PrepAnet, net meter accounts, and then the rest of the meter exchanges that we have pending right now.
Okay.
So we established our plan, and once we pull them out or receive them, that's our priorities to be working with.
Okay, great. Thank you, Noria.
And for the record, when I mention accuracy, it is the 0.02 accuracy.
Yes, yeah, that's incomplete.
That's all.
Anything else to Noria? No questions? Thanks a lot, Noria.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So, Bob?
Nothing more for the customer service.
Nothing else for Customer Service Committee? So we're going to go into Infrastructure and Occupancy Safety Committee, which is mine. So let's start with Efran, IRP. I understand we are in compliance, that we're getting together and working together.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Basically, we submit questions to the interveners as part of the process. We are working on the simulations that the Bureau imposes or order us to make regarding the energy efficiency alternative. So that simulation should be submitted to the PREP the next Wednesday, 27, yeah. November 27. So basically we are on schedule and we are working on the process on the calendar right now.
Okay. Anything else we need to know, the consumer needs to know? Any questions? No questions, Tomas, David?
So let me get a clarification. So the energy efficiency, what are we doing? The new modeling? Making
Yes.
the assumption that energy efficiency is not a part?
Yes, sorry about that. On the presented IRP, the current presented IRP, basically the PREP ordered us to simulate the 2% of energy efficiency per year
Okay.
for the 20 years study period. And then basically they ordered us to simulate two new scenarios. One without energy efficiency, and other one with the 1/3 of the original one. So
I see.
1/3 the 2%.
I see.
So we need to rerun basically around 12 new cases,
Okay.
and then submit to the PREP the new findings regarding those cases. Sure.
Okay, no other questions? Having no question, thanks. Efrain,
Pleasure.
nice day. Let's go to generation. Daniel,
Yes,
you and Daniel Hernandez.
we're here.
First of all, let's give a brief, how we're doing with the generation, how we're going with San Juan 5.
Oh, yeah.
And then, you had an assignment that we went on the committee, and it's good to give the explanation about what would happen with the generation if AES is taken. You gave it just till Monday, it's just going on.
How many hours you are gonna give me?
No, 5 minutes.
5 minutes. 5 minutes.
1 minute will be enough to hear him 1 hour.
You knew Daniel had such a sense of humor, you know?
It's very, very important, and the way the graphs and everything is prepared is very
Yeah,
clear.
it's, that was critical. But I would like to start just making a summary of where we are in the generation fleet, okay? Because we got good news, so for me it's very important to share the news with everybody and with customers as well. On October, we had 13 events on our generation power plants. That's not good news, but the good news is none of these events falls in load shedding. That means that our generation fleet is stronger, is in much better position than on September. Okay, so that is a good news. In San Juan power plant, we got now 4 units available and in service. That is something that we, a lot of time, I don't remember and see the unit 6, 7, 8, and 9 on service. That's great for us. Unit 5, we're still in the process of the conversion of the units for use LNG. We expected to finish that process on the 2nd week of December. So that's more or less the schedule we have right now. On Palo Seco, we got available the unit 3 and 4. Unit 1 and 2 are units of limited use by the MATs. Unit 1 right now is on environmental maintenance. Unit 2 is going to be retired from our system fleet. That unit will not get in operation anymore. Okay, in relation of megagens, this weekend we are going to put the gens in service to do the commission. That's great news. 3 of them will be in service between Friday and Monday. So that means from the next week, the units will be in commercial operation. So it's a great news for us as well.
Move forward.
On the Aguirre power plant, we got the unit number 1 in service at full capacity. The unit number 2, we got the people right now on Mexico on the power plant doing the FAT test. And the information that I have from today with a telephone conference we made, all the results until now are success. So that's another great news. The schedule to receive the transformer in Puerto Rico in place is at the end of December. We still have the same schedule to put the unit back in service on February. Okay, so that is we are on track with that project in particular. On Costa Sur, we got both units on service at full capacity. That's great as well. Unit 3 and 4 are units that are going to be retired as well. Those units are not going to be in service anymore. So today we have 3,574 megawatts of capacity, available capacity on our system. We got the reserve of 1,144 megawatts of reserve. That is huge. That is
Compared to
great.
October
That is
or
great.
September.
Yeah,
Wow.
that is great for us. And the load forecast for today was 2,450 megawatts. So we are in great shape in relation to our fleet system. The peak demand for October was 2,758 megawatt. That was above 2018. That was good for us as well. So the load behavior or load demand behavior is not going down. We are keeping,
Going
at
up.
least we're keeping.
And you're able to handle
Yeah,
that plus a
right
good
now,
reserve.
if we compare to the 2008, in relation to the production, we had a production for October of 1.7 billion megawatt hour, which represents 7% above 2018. So for business wise, is great for us. In terms of the total production per fuel type, on bunker C we use 20%, on diesel 18%. From those 18%, on San Juan we use 61%. On natural gas, on our units 21%, hydro 0.2%, Ecoelectrica 18%, as well as AES 18%. The renewable participation was 2.26%. Our production cost was 14.19 cents per kilowatt hour, AES 8.82, and Ecoelectrica 9.91. That is the summary of generation before to enter or to mention any result regarding the how will look the system without AES. Any question that you have to me, or you just need to mention what we already present yesterday? You want to mention that, or
what you presented yesterday was just to the committee.
Okay.
So there you have the full board.
Okay.
Plus the consumers, so and it's very important. So I guess you should go through the whole thing.
Okay. So that is all the information.
Which is very, very important. So, any questions before we go to? The committee asked Daniel to forecast what would happen if AES was taken out of the Pentagon. Okay, when people say we can shut down AES, just go out Puerto Rico, and we did. Well, so he completed his homework, so he's going to make the.
And just to remind our consumers that AES is the coal plant that provides what percentage of power to?
13.
Roughly 17%.
17%. Okay, so let's just understand that as a starting point.
And what's the average cost from AES's facility?
8.9 cents per kilowatt hour.
So it's one of our it's our cheapest.
It's our cheapest, yeah.
And has been for years, right? It's been the cheapest
Yes,
for many
since the
years.
beginning.
Yeah.
Much more cheaper, much more cheaper than the renewable system that we already have on the system.
Okay.
You want me to present the, all right. Okay. Okay, I'm gonna need the jump drive and the stick.
The stick.
The 1984 stick.
No.
Sí, porque esto es bien importante.
No, pero yo la envié por email.
Oye, Fernando, he oído cosas buenas allá de Hot, que me ha llegado por ahí.
No, pero
Con el second tranche. Con el second tranche.
con esta semana.
Pero he oído cosas así en esa línea.
Allá están pendientes
Al impeachment.
a pistas de confirmación de 3 de ellos. Está.
¿De verdad? No sabía.
Confirman a los deputies.
Ujú.
Okay. Can I start?
Lo quiera, chico.
Yeah. Okay.
¿Qué pasa?
Bueno, se ve abajo la
Ahora.
All right. What we got here, this graphic, let's first to understand this graphic. Information that we have here is a comparison of the load forecast versus the generation availability right now with the system that we have right now in service. The black line is the load forecast from today, from November 19 to December 20. This behavior, we assume the same behavior than this year and the previous year. It's like an average, okay? So the blue area is the total capacity of the base generation units. San Juan, Aguirre, Palo Seco, Costa Sur, AES, Ecoeléctrica. Okay? So until that, you can see that right now, if we keep our generation fleet as it is, we are in a healthy condition because we have enough generation to provide the load forecast. We are assuming here the maintenance program. That's the reason we got this spike or the valley when we take one of the units out of service. If we take one of the units out of service, we got less power, okay? The red part is the peaking generation, the reserve that we have on the system. So this is with AES and this is with the actual condition that we have. Please look what will happen if we take out AES from our system. In that graphic in particular, can you? Okay. Now with the same behavior from today until December 2020, you can see that the base load generation most of the time is not enough to provide the service. What that means that we need to run our diesel generation fleet, the peaking units, most of the time in order to have enough generation or to have enough reserve running in the system. If we compare the two graphics, you can see the difference between the system that we have right now and the system without AES. So what means if we take out AES out of service, first the cost will be higher because we're going to burn much more diesel, and second, the system will be fragile. We're going to be very close as September, for instance, that we had a lot of outages and a lot of people without service. Now let's compare how looks the reserve. Can you please next slide, please? This is the reserve. Okay, there's three lines very important to see. This line here means that if I touch the line, I'm gonna have a load shedding. There's not gonna be enough generation. Second line, which is very important, is the second black line, this one in particular, which represents the 450 megawatt that we need to have as a spinning right now.
Reserve.
Generation in service to
As a-
provide
Spinning reserve.
for peaks of generation. And the green one is the generation that we need to have at least offline, available but offline. Now you can see this with this. This is the reserve right now. Okay, what that means? That we have the reserve between the base load and the peaking unit load. With the difference of this will be the reserve that we have right now in service to provide the generation. But look what will happen if we lose. Then AES, the base generation reserve, almost are under the 450 megawatts required to keep the system. So we need to have all the time the peaking units in service in order to get the 450 megawatts that we need to keep the reserve. In sometimes we at least we don't reach at least the 650 megawatts of total reserve generation. So that's critical situation. If we can compare the two scenarios, we can see how much difference there's between the actual condition and the system without AES. So the idea is, okay, we can live without AES, but we need new generation. We need new generation, base generation, to mitigate this situation. If we allow to let AES be out of service permanently, we're going to have two things: higher cost generation, higher cost, and second, a lot of interruption for our customers. Okay? That's the study we perform in terms of generation. If you have any question.
And if you had to replace it with another baseload unit, what
That's
time?
right, it's baseload unit.
That'd be a baseload unit, yeah.
But and then in that case,
All the
there's,
permits and the
All
whole
the
thing.
permitting, it's a
but in
long
that case,
process.
there's no guarantee when that plant would get built, when it would be financed, when it would be permitted, that new plant,
That's
right?
right.
That greenfield plant. So to turn off one thing in the planning for a greenfield plant is unrealistic unless we have a project that we can really predict would happen.
And there is another data that is not there. We are not considering the amount of outages or events that we have in our system, because I cannot forecast that.
Right.
But the real part is that probably 14% at least of our units are going to trip monthly, or around that number.
So you have to be prepared to absorb that as well.
Yeah.
And actually, right now is the closest plant we have to serve the east of Puerto Rico.
Yes.
Guayama serves the east of Puerto Rico at this point. So you have to go farther away.
Yes.
That's, in terms of logistics
Yeah, so
and resiliency,
you get
it's a
line
problem.
loss, you get line loss and all that as well.
Tomas,
Yes, it is a shared, Owens, Mr. Hernandez, it was kind of logical thinking. If we remove 500 megawatts from the system, we're going to have that. So why we did this analysis is my question. It's logical thinking.
you know why I asked,
why-
we asked for it, because today we're reporting to the consumer, and the newspaper is just putting out there that AES needs to go out.
Oh.
We want the consumer to realize what would happen if AES goes out.
It's-
I agree with our CEO's position that before 2015, AES was forced to get all the ashes out of Puerto Rico. So there's no reason why they cannot get them out, but that's completely
Right.
different of shutting it down. And if you see the newspaper again today, they were saying shut down AES and shut down Ecoelectric.
Yeah, which makes no sense.
Which then, I mean, do we want to shut down the entire island? We need to be clear, and I just want to make sure that the consumer
Understand.
understands the real thing about power generation, and if we're talking about safety, we're speaking about lowering the cost of electricity. There are things that cannot happen.
And Mr. Chairman, might I?
I mean, there's a date, 2027, but.
But by then, you have the opportunity to do something else.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay?
And I was just going to add that if you think about the future of PREPA, we expect to go to concessionaires on transmission and distribution and to PPOAs. Two of our biggest PPOAs right now are Ecoelectrica and AES.
Right.
So to end those kind of agreements would send such a rippling message through the world. Who would want to come to Puerto Rico and build a plant under a PPOA with
Absolutely.
PREPA if we just randomly shut them down because we don't like the fuel they use?
Right.
I mean, we knew AES was going to use coal when they started. It's not like it was a surprise to us.
Okay. Any other questions, Tomas?
Just a comment. An interesting point, Daniel, will be to have that draft, having Mayagüez as base load. If we don't have AES, but we have Mayagüez as base load, I believe currently they are not in operation.
Mayagüez is an operation. No, it's not in base, it's not base load, but it's included as the
They come at
speaker.
night. They come at peak at night.
Yeah, but they're included here as speaker.
But if, we discussed a project in last meeting that converting Mayagüez to base load, so considering that, how will be the graph if we have Mayagüez as base load?
Well,
Without AES?
Yes?
Okay, we're gonna be more or less in the same situation because AES is around 500 and you are adding 220.
220.
So the difference, we still have a deficiency.
And we-
That's
And-
right. It will be a
and-
deficiency of
right.
200 instead of deficiency
And
of
still,
500.
we cannot model something that, remember, we approved an RFP to see if we can convert it and everything, but that's not.
So that
And
was-
it has to go through the IRP and through the whole thing, okay. Any other questions? Charles?
Just a quick one. I know that AES has, it's coal, so it has protected and everything. If you're running those peakers all the time, you lose APS. But are you going to hinder environmental exceedances from running the peakers?
Right now, our peakers, because they are too old, are not inside of the new regulation.
Okay.
We can run the peakers 100% of the time,
Okay.
our peakers.
And are you counting, in a lot of places, it all depends on your cloud cover and your wind. Do you give wind and solar any capacity credit?
Credit?
Would you looking at capacity there? And
Yeah.
let's say you have a couple hundred megawatts of rooftop solar, do you count that as 100 megawatts of capacity or 50 or 0?
The renewable that we have on the rooftop are not considered in the study.
Because, okay, that load is net of
Yeah,
self-generation.
these are just
What about-
control generation.
What
that
about
we-
if new wind facilities come on, will you count them as capacity?
Uh,
So, I mean,
Part,
Texas,
only part of the day,
Yeah.
because during the night in Puerto Rico there is no wind, so it's the same.
well, most people do, I mean, they just count it as 20%, everybody's different.
Yeah.
You have to look at the statistics.
Yeah.
And look at the sort of the coincident peak.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other question?
Okay, no other questions? Having no other questions, just the final thing, San Juan 5, when we ignite it.
So 1.5, the conversion?
I know it's in process.
No, I already mentioned.
Second week of December, right?
Second week of
The
December,
second week
okay.
of December.
Perfect, okay. No other questions? Having no other questions, we're gonna go to TND. And having TND, Jose Sepúlveda, the first thing, let's take 2 minutes to read the resolution and vote on it and make any changes we want before we keep with TND.
Right. A couple of questions. So is this going to require FOMB approval?
Yes, they approved the reapportionment item by item on the budget. We identify already the budget items.
Yep.
But we have to send them the reallocation.
Got it.
And that's it.
It's within the budget, it's just reallocated.
Yes.
Got it. And so, in that case, we don't really need Nelson's declaration that the money's there, the money's already there.
No, he does.
Well, where is it then? I don't see it in the resolution, my
No, it
friend.
is.
Subject to the certification.
Oh, second page? Okay. Thank you.
Second page.
Third page. Subject
Therefore.
to the certification of funds for service.
That's fine, you guys go ahead and beat me back, it's all good.
I like that, Nelson's declaration.
I'm good.
What percentage done is this project?
80%.
Yeah, this looks okay to me.
80 plus.
I sort of got the same question you did. If it's 80% done, why is the remaining 20%?
Remember, the 80%, not everything was done by external
Outside
contractors.
contractors, right.
Okay, so within there.
So we're also
Right.
doing,
Okay,
yeah,
yep.
Yeah, let's find a middle.
this is just for the contractors.
And
Yeah,
all
the other-
all this is reimbursable.
Yeah, the other people are paid for.
Yes.
And we're keeping track of their time
Yes.
as well, because that's
Yes.
reimbursable. as
Our
well.
municipalities, they will require the reimbursement of labor.
Uh-huh.
We'll get the reimbursement of equipment.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay.
Okay? Any questions? Tomas, you read them? Everybody finished? No questions? Move Charles
I'll
moves the
second it.
motion and Bob seconds. Nobody gets everybody in favor for the safety of the Puerto Rico island. I hope we finish by the 31st and we can
That'd be kind of a great thing, though. I mean, we started this lighting project less than a year ago.
Yep.
It was like April or something, wasn't it?
And I can say, this weekend I was in Highway number 1.
Yeah.
And there were 3 trucks following one against the other, trying to move the thing. So I hope things move. And I would say, yes, there is some space to lower the price. a little.
Absolutely.
Okay, but it's being approved, so,
Just a comment. So you supervise this contractor. They are under your responsibility or they're under PMO? Who supervises?
Oh, directly by me, directly by the PMO.
Directly by PMO.
Yes, PMO as an inspector.
Just to let you know, I was this week, and someone started telling me about a lighting project in their home, in their street. They told me they repair 5 lights and they let 3 out, and the reason they gave is because that was not part of my contract. So it's important to keep the supervision on this contract, so people feel well served. And interaction of contractor directly with consumers also may not provide the correct information. So supervision is important, because I just got that this week.
Okay.
With my street, they just repair, and they give me on.
There are cases, and I don't say this might be the case, but there are cases that the pole is not in good shape. That cases are left by the contractor to PREPA. Why? Because we have, when we try to get a reimbursement for it from FEMA under their recommendation obliges PREPA to do an HP or environmental study on it.
If I
on
may
every
very
change.
briefly say, Mr. Owens, the member Owens has a plane to catch, and we still have quorum to proceed, but I don't know if he wants to consign his vote or delegate a proxy on this resolution.
See you later, man.
But just for the record.
You
this is
voted
the-
already.
No se ha votado.
Sí, ya se votó.
Sí,
Ah,
se
pero yo
votó.
salí a buscar el chofer.
Se
All
votó,
right.
eso está aprobado. Okay, have a nice trip, David.
Thank you.
We'll keep in touch.
Everybody have a great holiday.
You too, Dave.
Likewise.
Okay,
Go in DC.
answer, you have anything else?
We want to take out the contractors from that kind of work, leave it to PREPA, so we are going to be back on those cases. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, the members of the board and colleague directors. Last October, this governing board has a meeting on Mayagüez Town. There, several mayors requested for PREPA to specific situations presented recently some barrios and sectors across their municipalities that have several problems in them. These situations are like follows. Mayor of Rincon, he told us about Barrio Atalaya. Clients there perceived voltage problem during nights. So a complete evaluation was made on the primary lines correspond to the district, develop the charges through the feeder, and to restore several spans of cable that were out during Maria's emergency. On the same municipality, Barrio Puntas, clients are presenting voltage problems and interruptions. The study was took place, make improvements on the feeder, to make improvements on the feeder in that area. We have to divide the actual service from Barrio Puntas to Ensenada, since these services have been tied as a result of Maria emergency loss. A voltage converter from 13.2 to 4.16 kV has been installed to mitigate the process, the problem, but was not enough for it. There is a complicated task we have ahead of us, so the use of helicopter might be needed as well. To Cabo Rojo, which includes Barrio Pocarons and Combate, line 13400, which is a 38 kV line, was experimented interruptions, and as a result, sectors served from Pocaron and Combate substations are suffering from this. This line has been patrolled, and several points of vegetation management were detected, and also hot points that might represent a future breakdown. The vegetation management is being done by a contractor company, Perfect Integrated Solutions, and we expect to finish the line segments in the next 3 weeks. Hot points will be done by PREPA and planned outages with the help of specialized groups, as we know as the whole in here. The mayor has requested several spans reallocations of this line, so an estimate is running for it. Hormigueros, Sector El Hoyo, clients were experimenting different service problems, so a feeder project for reconstruction is taking place. PREPA is extending the primary line to the sector, so poles and insulators are in place right now. We are expecting an estimate to be approved to install the cables and the corresponding connections. It's important to mention that in that meeting, PREPA also informed the mayors that as the emergency ends, so direct federal funds to run that task. The permanent work on the system is moving forward. So with that is the design of a renovated grid, proposal for a fixed distribution voltage, which is going to be 13.2 kV, and renovation of the substations in all towns. All the discussions is on the table right now between PREPA and FEMA personnel, as PREPA seeks to have more resistant and resilient grid. In terms of public line repair, as we were talking right now, PREPA is now back on the scene as we continue with the program between us and the contractors on this job. We're expecting to put this issue under control after a delay, as director said, about UTR negotiations at the end of this year. We want to state, as you remind, that public lighting repairs is very changing and challenging task. It's a continuous task, as we may have observed, that requires continuous work and attention. This is why of the project is to have it as a controlled way so PREPA can resume it back at the end of the contractor's jobs. On the other hand, we continue to work with vegetation management as we completed 13.3 effective miles in distribution and 5.1 miles effective miles in transmission. For today, we have an accumulation of 69.7 effective miles in distribution and 35.1 miles in transmission. We are helping, with the help of PMO, we want to continue the RFP and complete the RFP for this task. So more resources are added and involved in the same task that we are doing with lighting repairs. So we want to put that task also in a controlled way as soon as possible. That's Mr. Chair, it's my report. If you have any questions,
Okay, anybody has any questions? Bob, Tomas, Charles? I really appreciate
Thank you, sir.
your report. So, let's go to the next point. La que ellos están haciendo copia ahora? Okay, we're making some copies of the resolution that was rewritten on the generation section. So we'll work on the water system, so we'll work it afterwards. Shehali? Occupancy safety update.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. So very brief, very. So last month, October, PREPA meet and exceed our safety goal. The incident rate was 7.79. So our goal is 8. So is the result for the following efforts. First was the combined work with the health division, and they hiring more nurses, so they attend first aid case. And second is addition to the with the PREPA director, administration, managers, and engineer and chief operation. So they keep implementation their commitment to the safety in their area. And third one, in the field level, our officer, safety officer. So we maintain inspection, audit, intervention with the crews, and ongoing consulting and advisor to our employees and contractors. First was the training and retraining program. So we keep a training and retraining program. We have aggressive training for the documentation requirement on the safety occupational division, record keeping, OSH Act, and we complete 90% of PREPA's personnel the training of the violence workplace training, and all the safety training as required for reduced risk at work. And the last one is focus. We change the focus at the risk awareness in everything for safety. The new project we working and we present in the committee was we call PREPA Electric Safety Program. So maybe we change the name, but it's complete. It's now in review and start the internal approval documentation process in PREPA. We are able to share with any company or person who made business with us, with PREPA, and our employees too. And the last thing is we thank all people who participate in our health and safety fair celebrated in November 14, last week. And also I thank Anaheim Mendes University and INEDA and Croatia, so invited us to participate in the Safety Sound and Sound campaign. The closing was the last week, November 13. Our topic was the safety during emergency and disaster response. So this is my report.
Any questions?
Question?
I know I would say that for next month it's gonna be on our web page.
On the web, yeah.
Yeah, because it looked pretty good yesterday, Monday.
Yes.
So I would say it's gonna get all the approvals and have it for December. Any questions for Shirley? And thanks a lot for everything. And keep improving on the safety, because it's very, very important for our employees. Okay? I would say that wraps the infrastructure and occupancy safety. So now we go to human resources. Charles?
The main thing on human resources, thank you, Mr. Chairman, is the negotiation of the union contract, and for that I'll look to Jose.
Well, yes, I think we have Mark here, but
Mark will do it, okay.
certainly he spent more hours than I did on that regard. But it was a great agreement, in terms of showing good faith and fairness. And we also talked to some of the other union leaders, saying that this will translate into other, deals eventually with the others. So we are not giving special treatment to the UTIER that is not going to be granted in some way to the others, including the lower level managers we have. Right now we have many of the levels under the top guys on the UTIER service. So we have to deal with that. We have budget for it, but that will come eventually. But it was a great achievement. It was very quick, reached very quick, and I have to also commend the people in the Department of Labor. They were in communication 100% with us. They didn't move without touching base with how we feel about X or Y. So I have to commend the work from the mediator and the Secretary of
U.S.
Labor.
Department of Labor, I forgot we got into.
Department of
mediation.
Labor, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
So Mark.
I know now it has our blessing, it still needs a F1B blessing.
Yes, yes. We're waiting for them. We notified them already, all the details, and we're waiting for them.
Okay.
So, Mark Tez, Director of Human Resources and Labor Relations. Briefly on the preliminary accord with Lautier, they're going to receive a 15% increase. That's for the linemen we're working right now in PREPA. We have 4 types of linemen: lineman 1, lineman 2, lineman 3, lineman 4 job descriptions. In a year after the signing of the accord, they're going to receive a 5% raise, and in 2 years, at the same date of the signing of the accord, they're going to receive a 5% increase. As part of the negotiations, we have a new job description for all the different linemen. There are many details that we're working to those job descriptions that make PREPA work easier on the field. And one of the major ones is that the lineman 1 will become now a type of apprentice lineman, and the reality in the field, once they pass that stage, is we're going to have 3 job descriptions of linemen working in the technical areas in the street for PREPA. There were also some dispositions that pertain emergency work and training. Where now we have a mandatory training for refreshment training for the linemen, and it's going to be offered every 2 years, or if they go from one type of lineman to another. If they ascend, they're going to have to have the refresh. There are many small details of working to that accord, and I think it's a good one for PREPA and for alignment too. So that will help PREPA and the retaining of that resource here in PREPA.
To me, although economically it's not a very big impact, certainly what I would like to highlight as the main important thing is that for almost 15 years, the duties, the roles of the linemen were not touched. At this point, we were able to open that door to look for more efficiency. So that's to me, that was the biggest step here.
Yeah, work rules can be a big deal.
Yes.
It's the first time since the last 19 years that some changes have been made for the lineman job descriptions.
The work rules, yeah.
So I also submit my report for the month of October, and well, on the labor situation in October, we have stoppages and strike from the linemen that eventually led to the lineman strike that we had to deal with this month.
Excuse me, Mark, how many days were they actually on strike? I kept losing track.
Well, it started, in some areas they will have.
So it was a rolling strike.
Yeah, they will have a technical district in the morning out, then another in the afternoon, then both. It was kind of a random thing. But in the last 3 months, it was a full lineman strike. In the last 3 weeks, we didn't have any UTR linemen working in the technical areas.
3 weeks, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Sometimes, and you had so much time, it was no overtime at all. So
right before that, we had no overtime.
Right.
Yeah, the work was done with WITISE, the technical workers of WITISE, and our supervisor.
And the supervisor, which did a wonderful job.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, they really did. I don't expect, now we don't have the labor situation, and I don't expect in the next few months that we will have labor stoppages and strikes related to our union. So I foresee a few months of calm labor relations here in PREPA.
That sounds great, especially starting a political year. Any questions for
I forgot to ask during the meeting, what's the length of the contract?
3 years?
3 years.
Yes.
Okay.
Any other question?
Any other question? Having no other question concerning human resources and legal affairs, I'm gonna make a little opening here. Since I forgot, I passed on my committee, the PMO. So
Yeah, first, I'd like to excuse Fernando Padilla, who's out of the island, as you know. He asked me to summarize in a few minutes his monthly report, or some of the highlights of his monthly report. I'll begin first with the budget versus actual analysis that the PMO office is in charge of tracking every month. For the month of October, overall revenues from electricity sales were higher than expected, primarily due to fuel and purchase power. However, fuel costs reflected a negative variance of about 35%. That was due to the shift in dispatch from bunker C to diesel fuel. That was the result, as you recall, of the challenges that we had at the end of September in operations, that we had to switch to diesel in combination with some seas conditions in the ocean that prevented us from delivering through barges, and we had to deliver diesel through trucking as well. There is also positive variance in maintenance costs of 39% for the month of October. That's due to pending invoices on the street light projects that have not been entered, and also the delay in the implementation of vegetation management project that was budgeted for 50 million.
So that's just temporary, right?
And
it'll
right,
get eaten
right.
up soon.
It will vegetation management, remember, it won't catch up.
Well, the vegetation management won't.
But the street light will, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then on the necessary maintenance expense tracking, which is our version of the capital budget, our utilization right now is about, as of October, based on expenses accounted for, is at 12%. However, this is not a straight line utilization, as you know. There's a lot of projects, especially in generation, that are backloaded. So we expect that utilization will pick up as we begin the calendar year in 2020. And finally, on the reports on the projects that we have, projects and initiatives of the fiscal plan, 68% of the projects were categorized as on track. There were 2 projects that were shifted last month to at risk. One I don't necessarily agree with, because we spoke about this, the damage meter replacement. That was just a 4 to 5, as I mentioned, about a 4-week delay. It's not necessarily at risk. And then the other is the vehicle fleet maintenance, and that has been on hold until the resolution of the concession agreement, and in order to see how that compiles with the task under the expected concession. So that's the highlights of the PMO office under the projects.
Any questions? No questions asked. Thanks a lot, Jaime. And so we go to the next point in the agenda, finance and bankruptcy.
A couple of things to cover very quickly, which Nelson will cover. We've already covered the audited financials with Bob on audit, so that doesn't need to be done. And the other thing, there's one that's very interesting. You see all of the advertisements on TV about how insurance companies settle quickly. We can now get the other viewpoint. and then the Fleisch report also.
Right. That's right. So we'll talk about the monthly Fleisch report in a moment. But yes, I'd like to mention to you that the recent achievements since the October 28th update to the Finance and Bankruptcy Committee regarding the Hurricane Maria insurance claim. So just several last week, specifically on November 15th, the insurers confirmed that they have preliminary approval to make the next $25 million advance payment before year end. When this payment is received, PREPA will have received a total of $75 million in recoveries above the $25 million policy deductible, as compared to the $106 million in hard committed costs that had been submitted before the October 29th claim meetings. So I think that's positive news. We were looking forward to an investment of $50 million. The insurers confirmed approval to make $25 million. We will be working very closely with the insurers, as we have been for the last several months, to ensure additional advances insofar as the insurance claim. Insofar as the flash report and building on the net income overview provided by the PMO office, I'd like to mention that the sales, and that's reflected on the monthly flash report, the sales for kilowatts for the month of October were greater than budgeted by 3.6% and lower than the prior year amount by 40%. The year-over-year decrease, the decrease from the prior year amount of 14%, is that at this same, for the month of October last year, there were invoices, estimated invoices sent to approximately 115,000 customers. This was all during the process last year of recovering
So it was
the
all
invoicing.
bunched up in October.
Of last year.
Right, it was, but during the hurricane aftermath, you weren't billing for a while, so,
That's
right?
correct.
So you were catching up on those months.
That's correct.
Okay, got it.
Insofar as generation for the month of October, it was greater than budgeted by 2.4% and greater than the prior year by 6.6%. Insofar as fuel use, the actual year-to-date amount of barrels used was 23.8% greater than budgeted and 8% greater than last year. And obviously, we all know about the outages in the code generators that we suffered at certain PREPA-owned generating plants that required the use of peaking units, specifically diesel fuel. Insofar as the fuel cost, as of the year-to-date fuel cost, as of October 2019, it was $543.1 million. 28% greater than the budgeted amount and 4.2% greater than the prior year. Insofar as purchase power, the actual year-to-date cost as of October was $248.5 million, 2.6% lower than budgeted and 14.8% greater than the prior year. Insofar as the price per kilowatt for the month of October, it was 23.93 cents compared to the budget amount of 21.42 cents and 20.35 cents in the prior year. I'd like to mention that the cash in accounts as of November 8th was $356.1 million.
That's a month and a half cash flow?
That's about a month and 1 day of cash flow.
Month and 1 day cash flow, got it.
Right. Our operating expenses are approximately $250 to $300 million per month.
Okay.
Yes.
So did you say that the sales were down?
Yeah.
Yes,
year
that's
over year?
year over year.
Yep.
But you said that generation, now I'm maybe talking revenues and megawatt hours, but you said both generation and purchase power were considerably up. Were they not?
Right, and so far as the fuel, that's probably because of the cost of fuel. So we had the price per barrel, the average price per barrel for the year is $74.82. It was the budgeted amount was $72.36. $72.
No, I understand that.
Any other questions?
Nope. Questions?
Any other information? That's it? Fernando, no other questions? Thanks a lot, Nelson.
Welcome, thank you.
Thanks for the report, and let's go to our CEO.
What hasn't been covered yet?
Yeah, really.
Yes, I would like to talk about 3 items, basically. One of them is that on P3, we have been very active recently, since we have a kind of more certainty of the future. So on the batteries that, the batteries project, we basically selected the awardee, but they are waiting for some collateral from the federal government to be awarded, to participate, and we are asking to refine the numbers since that happened like a year ago, and then we're waiting for FEMA to help us on that regard. Omar Marrero feels comfortable that approval is coming very soon, so let's see. That will be 3 banks of batteries, 2 in the metro area, one Bayamon, the other Carolina, one in the east in Humacao.
And how many megawatts?
60 each.
60 each, so.
That'll be
180.
very important, more than to anybody else to the east. All the plants are very far from the east.
Right.
So you
So
mean
it's-
Fermin, right?
Sorry?
You mean Fermin Fontanes instead of Omar?
No, I meant Omar. Originally, he was the one who started with that now he's in AFAF, but he's following up on FEMA.
Okay.
To complete the deal. But Fermin is the executive director
Okay,
today.
I thought it was.
That's when we got confused a little.
No.
You're clearer than we thought.
And they're clear. Each one are clear. Okay, so that's moving the hydro. The refurbish of all the hydros, basically. They were shortlisted, basically, like a week ago. The same happened with the peaking units. There was a short list. There were 11 proponents. It was shortlisted, I don't know, to 6 or so. And on Palo Seco, we will be checking who delivered the proposals and who's qualified. We understand we have more than 10 proponents for Palo Seco, so there's a lot of interest in Puerto Rico. So, and the T&D concessions, we are going to receive proposals by the end of this week, at the end of this month.
We'll see the final.
No, we're gonna receive the proposals.
At the end of the month.
By the end of this month.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's the final proposal.
Final proposals, got it.
And by mid-December, we are planning to recommend to the different entities, to this board, to the FOMB, to the PREP as well. Okay? So it's very active this month. In terms of the social media, it's very important, very interesting what we're doing on social media. This month we had a slump on the hits to 3.4. We had last month 4.4 million. But this is basically because we don't have any hurricane around. The outages are not as many. And also, I think we have been very successful with providing information beforehand. As soon as we know there is a power outage by maintenance or it just happened accidentally, then we notify that immediately, and many people are going there to check the information.
I went through that experience last week myself on Vieques, exactly that experience.
Nice.
6 minutes before it showed up on Twitter, about another 20 minutes before it was fixed.
Yes.
And you explained what was going on, and I just chilled out.
So the usual complainers go there and feel satisfied that we're providing information. So it's a great job, and from the communications department, but also for the ones to execute, which are the T&D guys. So they're communicating with communications, so that we provide the information to the public.
I saw it in action. Worked well.
So it's very positive. Right now we reached 191,000 on Facebook.
Really?
It's a big number, yes, for a utility. Probably the highest in the government.
Yeah.
Most probably. Yes. And the last item is that we had the APPA annual meeting to talk about the mutual aid changes and learnings and process improvements for the mutual aid. And we haven't been present in there for more than 10 years. We sent 3 representatives. They were very pleased that Puerto Rico is participating on that. So we're working together with other entities, sisters and parent and brothers.
That's why that NIPA
like NIPA and some others.
That relationship is so important.
And Puerto Rico contribute a lot. Arturo Delis was one of the guys. He said, we learned a lot. I met a lot of people who will be working with us in case of a disaster. So it was very, very positive for the entity.
Good.
So that's it. That's all I have.
Any questions for our CEO? Don't have any questions?
Progress.
Thanks a lot. Things are, the progress is being noticed. Things are being calm. Generation is there, TND is working. Actually, we have been commenting that you have a great team and they're working as a team, which is very, very, very important. We're gonna we have to see if we get the final approval for the resolution. So of the water. So if you want to read them, take 2 minutes. There is a paragraph that is in yellow that was added. And on the therefore number 1, the last sentence on number 1 was also added. It's not yellow, but it was added.
Yes, that gives us a perspective, and we approve the following this, so that.
Yeah, that's an improvement.
So
I'll propose the resolution.
okay, Mr. Robert Paul moved approve
Charles second.
the resolution. And Charles seconds. Any against? No comments? It's approved. So the resolution for the request of the water pollution control. Approved. Any other matters?
Yes, I have a question. Last meetings, we have been discussing the Ecoelectrica that was supposed, is on the minutes, supposed to be brought to FOMB and FOMB and the PREP. So if any status, when will that come back to us?
I understand that
Sure.
FOMB asked a couple of questions.
Yes, and they were answered. I asked Alejandro today about the status. He says, like, in a week or so, we should have the answer back. That's what they all see that very positive. And to the PREP, we send all the information as well. We haven't received anything from the PREP yet.
The only problem that I see is the one that I pointed out, is the risk of purchasing the fuel and not letting that risk to be assumed by the provider. Besides that, it seems to be a good.
Yeah, but I think we went over that already.
Mr. Chairman, I would propose like a closure motion to this meeting.
Okay. Anybody against?
Does represent risk.
So
It's approved.
seconds approved.
Okay, so Vice Chair Hill has presented a motion to adjourn and close the meeting.
Second.
It's been seconded by Mr. Taylor. So with no opposition, the meeting is.
Good job, Charlie. You were paying attention.
I never used it.
Okay, all right.